All right, folks. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Bucks of America podcast. I am your host, Jeff Vance. So my episode tonight is with Paul Otten. Now, he is the genius behind advanced outdoor technologies, and I'm not gonna explain it. I'm gonna let him do it because this is such a unique product that it's like I wish I had it or wish it came out years ago. But it's like I'm glad it's finally on the market, and it's going to be exciting to let him talk about it. But I want you to get to know the man himself, and also you guys are in for a treat. This is his very first podcast, and you got to thank Ben Klausman from the Sodak Outdoors, or South Dakota Horizon Outdoors. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have ever reached out to him. And it's like because of how our feeds intermingled, it was just a no-brainer. So, man, Paul, thank you for coming on to the podcast. I'm excited. This is your very first one. So this is going to be fun. So, Paul, why don't you tell me like more about who you are and like how you got into hunting and fishing or being the outdoorsman you are today?
Well, I'm from San Jose, California, and most people are like, you don't seem like you're from San Jose. But my father was always into hunting, and my grandfather, they were both into hunting. My father actually and my grandfather actually owned some duck hunting property. I actually own it now, 50-acre pond, series of ponds that we duck hunt, and I have people come out and hunt with me on. So I grew up duck hunting. I mean, my dad was carrying me across the pond on his back when I was, 8, 10 years old. And so, I mean, I was, a duck hunter for Halloween and, in my camo. And then I was always into Army surplus stuff. My grandfather was really into surplus stuff. And so I would dig through the cabinets in the garage and I'd find like military surplus canteen or something. Like, whoa, you take the canteen out and there's a cup inside. So I had the whole rig going with the canteen, all the ammo pouches, and I just always loved camo. And my parents eventually bought some property up in the Sierras, and they had a log cabin built. So when I was like 12 years old, maybe even before that, like I was always running around up in the Sierras with my BB gun, and eventually I had a recurve bow. That's what I started with, was a recurve. First time I shot a bow was at a camp for like in fourth or fifth grade. They send all the kids to this camp up in the mountains, and they had an opportunity for you to shoot a bow and arrow. And it was a little cheesy bow and arrow, and I shot it, and I hit the dirt, couldn't hit the target, and I was super upset about it. And I was like, I know I'm better than this. This is, and so that always made me mad. And then like a few years later, I was a little bit older. One of my friends who was a neighbor, he invited me to a Christian summer camp, and I went to that. And it turns out they had an archery range, and I went there, and they had like a real recurve bow, and then they had a person there that actually instructed me, oh, you got to put the arrow's got to be on a certain way, and how to kind of draw a little bit. And I started shooting, and the guy's like, oh, you're really good. So I came home. I was like, Mom, Dad, I want a bow and arrow. And I thought they were gonna just be like, yeah, right. And the biggest shock of my life, my dad goes, oh, that's easy. There's one upstairs in the closet. And I was like, what?
Nice.
I have scoured every inch of this house as a child looking for Christmas presents. How would I never come across a bow and arrow in the closet? Sure enough, there was a bow and arrow in the closet. And I got it all set up as a 30-pound curve. And so then I used to go up to my parents' cabin and just fling arrows at everything. And I did that for a long time. And then I had a friend that lived down here in the city and we weren't big enough back then to pull back, like a 45-pound bow was like, I could barely get it back. Like we couldn't pull back something you could really hunt with, you know what I mean? Because we were just kids.
Okay.
And my friend, I think he got a crossbow first. And who doesn't want a crossbow, right? So I ended up getting a Barnett crossbow, and with using my legs and both my arms, I could get it cocked. I had a couple scary situations with that, but after a while, I got a little bigger, and I used to shoot it in my backyard. I got a scope for it. I had it all dialed out, and I could shoot it really good, but I learned a lot about archery, about trying to get a broadhead to fly.
Okay.
From this situation, because whenever I run into people that are like, oh, I want to get a crossbow, I'm like, okay, first of all, you got to understand all these things. It's not what you think. So, a crossbow that has a 150-pound draw, it really doesn't put out, like a 70-pound bow, because the draw length is so short. They say the longer your draw length, the more power you get. Well, crossbow draw length, it's not like a 32. They could make them, I'm sure, but they don't seem to. And then the other thing is the arrows are short, so you put a fixed blade on that. Back then I was shooting, Bear razors, these big, old school broadheads, and you put one of those on the end, and the fletchings aren't helical either, because it sits in a groove, so all the fletchings are straight, so you don't have any spin. And so I would try and shoot a broadhead at 25 yards, and it would miss the target almost. It'd just go all over the place. And this was back before they had expandables. Expandables kind of solved that whole issue. But anyway, I shot that thing for a while, and we tried to go up in the hills and get after pigs, but I never took a shot at a pig with it. Probably a good thing. And then eventually my buddy, he got bigger, and I don't know, somehow he decided to get a bow and arrow. And so he got a compound, and I still have my crossbow. And I went over to his house, and we set up a target. And, I was always impressed that my crossbow arrows would stick out the back of the target, like this far. I mean, the arrow's only a little bit longer than that. And he was shooting a flame. I don't know if it was a PS Darton or a PSC. I forget who made it. But this was back in the day. I don't know how old you are. They had overdraws. So basically what they would do is they would move the rest back. Even if there would be like a piece you bolt on that moves the rest back, like way back, and then you shorten your arrows, and then you get way more speed, but it just makes it way less forgiving for your shooting. But back then that was like the hot thing, was the overdraw. So anyway, he had that thing. He started cranking it up to 90 pounds and everything, but he would shoot the target even before he cranked it up, and his arrow would stick out like twice. It'd go twice as far into that target as my 150-pound crossbow. And I was like, and then the other thing is the crossbow, like, the arrows, like, so like 45 was kind of hitting the max range on that, and it was really arcing in there. So I quickly realized, you know what? I want a compound bow. So I got my first bow. It was from Cabela's. And I ordered it. It was a Golden Eagle Carbine Hawk. Had 80% let off. It went up to 60 to 80 pounds or something like that.
All right.
And I had to wait. It was on back order. I had to wait months and months and months to get that thing. It finally showed up. I couldn't believe it. And so then I had to learn. Archery, and I had all sorts of learning experiences. I put my wrist strap release on. I ran down to the range. I had to take it to I had to take it to a pro shop to get it set up, because I didn't know how to set it up. and I learned right away. They're like, "What did you buy this at Cabela's and then bring it into here for?" So
Yeah, that
everyone
type of
hears,
conversation.
I'm like, "Oh, well, I didn't know that was a thing. I just got my bow." And so they, set it up, and I had this like TM Hunter pronghorn rest. I don't know if you're familiar with those things.
I only got into archery in 2014, so my experience with archery is very limited. So
Okay.
I'm only been dealing with the top of line technology for the last period. You've actually got to work with the progression of everything. I got really big into paintball back in the
I
the
started with
90s.
aluminum arrows, big fat XX75 super slams.
I think that's what I'm rocking right now is game chasers from Easton. They're aluminum arrows because I just like shooting. I got a 34 axle, and they're just so much more fun with a longer axle, just to kind of get that nice arc and consistency and such. So it kind of gave me a reason to start using them again. I'm only using them for targets, so I won't dare bring them out for hunting.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I don't know. My buddy helped convince me that, like, you got to have the fat shaft aluminum, and
Oh yeah.
And then, like, when the carbons came out, I was like, those are for sissies. You got to shoot the aluminums. And I got another buddy. By then, I was in college. And I got a guy who I was up in Chico. You probably know where that's at, but it's up north in kind of the agricultural rice growing area. And I got a buddy into archery, and he was a real good dude. I knew if I got him into archery, he would give me a hunting spot, and it paid off.
Oh, that's the way to do it.
Guy that everybody loved. And anyway, I hooked him up with a bow, but I didn't give him all the accessories, so he had to go buy all the accessories. But in no time, apparently there was a warehouse in Orville. It's like a distributor that just sends all the products to all these shops or something.
All right.
And he was doing like tile and rich houses and countertops and stuff like that. And so he did this guy's house and started talking about archery. And the guy's like, "Oh, I have an archery warehouse." And he's like, "Oh, gave him carbon arrows and like, just like a truckload of stuff."
Nice.
So anyway, he started shooting carbons, and he had a great deer story. So he was hunting. We got to hunt the country club, where there was like a spot that they hadn't developed yet. Just primo, there's big bucks, turkeys, and he got access to it because he knew the owner. And he went up there, and there was a buck bedded down at like 70 yards. He had just started shooting like that year.
Okay.
He did a lot of practice at 20, but I mean, it's almost kind of a miracle that he made this shot. He took a 70-yard shot at this thing. He missed it the first time. It hit just below it, I guess.
All right.
And then he just aimed higher, used his next pin, and then shot it right through the heart at 70 on the second shot. And people talk about penetration. This blew me away. He had me clean the thing for him. And the arrow went right through here, through the heart. I pulled the heart out. You could see the broadhead marks on it. Came out the other side, broke the leg, and completely passed through at 70 yards. And it was just a carbon, run-of-the-mill carbon arrow with probably like a thunderhead, 100-grain thunderhead broadhead. And he was shooting a bear heart bow, which didn't have an aggressive cam. And yeah, just devastation. Like, so, when I hear people talk about, you got to have, an 800-grain arrow and, all this FO3, I'm like, I'm not saying that stuff won't help you, but, 20 years ago, arrows were going through animals. Just a standard lightweight carbon arrow that just came out. So I've had pretty good luck with some of all the animals that I've shot. I've shot a few pigs. We have a lot of pigs around here in California. If you
Yeah,
get
I'm
access
familiar.
to it, it's not easy to get access. So I always had to wait around and hope someone would invite me. And I got lucky a few times and got invited. And yeah, my first pig wasn't very big, like under 100 pounds. And I shot it. It did a pass through.
Okay.
And then it went off in the grass, and I kind of followed after it, and then it was still half alive. It'd get up and kind of run off, and then it'd lay down. I put a few more into it. Finally got it. But yeah, I've had real good. I mean, I haven't had any problems with. I've always shot fixed blade. I've experimented. I have some expandables. I've never really put them into anything. I've launched them a couple times, but I haven't shot too much of the expandables. I did a tree stand hunt in Indiana 2 years ago through Chad Mendez's Fins and Feathers.
Okay.
And when I was up in that, I brought some expandables, and then for a long time I shot muzzies. But then I noticed before I went on an elk hunt, I had just heard about slick tricks. This was in like 2011. It was my first elk hunt. I went to Montana. And so I ended up buying some slick tricks, and then I had the muzzies. I was shooting carbon arrows, and I had learned in Chico, I shot at this turkey, and I didn't realize it because I had never practiced with my broadheads. The broadheads were actually not impacting in the same spot that my field points were. So I was, a great shot with field points, and we had turkeys come in like 30, 40 yards, which should have been Smoke City. And I shot at them twice, and like, I didn't hit them. And I was like, what the hell? So I happened to have a big foam turkey target, and I set it out like the next day, and I walked back 40 yards, took a field point, shot it, boom, right in the chest.
Okay.
I don't understand. And I put my broadhead on, and I shot high left into the tail feathers. I was like, oh, I must have flinched, because broadheads are real sensitive. Fixed blades, you do any little bit, you can get a flyer. I'm like, I'm going to come back, shoot that again, make sure it's a perfect shot. So I come back, do it again, do the best shot I can do, high and left in the tail. I go walking down there, my arrows were impacting high left in the tail about that far from each other. They were like grouping,
Yeah, I get you.
And so that's why, if you read archery talk, everyone's talking about tuning and arrow tuning and all this stuff. It's something, if you're going to shoot a fixed blade broadhead, you absolutely have to test it to see if it's impacting the same as your field points. Otherwise, you could learn a hard lesson the way I did.
Well, that's good. Then at least you didn't wound any animals. So how did you get hooked up with Chad Mendez's group? Was it a guided hunt then, or what's?
Yeah. I had my idea for the invention. That was about 2 or 3 years ago. So basically how this whole thing got started is one of my buddies, he started shooting a handheld release. He's real good friends with a guy that owns a Predator archery shop down here. And anyway, he got him a stand handheld release, and he was shooting it. And for some reason, he wanted me to switch. He didn't tell me this, but he showed me it, and he's like, dude, this thing sounds sweet. You gotta, and I'm like, how much are they? And he's like, oh, they're like 200. And I was like, oh, no way. I gotta spend that kind of money. I got my wrist strap. Like, so he's like, "Oh, I'll sell it to you for $100." And I was like, "What? Like it's a $200 for $100?" I'm like, "All right, sold."
Yeah,
Like,
that's how I'd be
how
right
you gonna
now.
how are you gonna say no to that? So
Exactly.
he did that on purpose because he wanted me to switch. So anyway, I shot it and I was like, "Well, this thing is sweet," and I could see how with the index, it's like shooting a handgun. Your trigger finger can influence the right and left.
That is correct, 100% on that.
And with the handheld, it just seemed like it's cleaner and it just seems a little more you get the pull like they say you're supposed to do, and everything. So I was like, okay, I could see why target archers are using it, and it feels great. I like shooting it, and I never liked. So the thing about the wrist strap, I liked the fact that it was always accessible for hunting. It's on your wrist. You're like, no problem. But I just never liked it on there. It's always wrist is getting sweaty. The thing's always in the way. Your hand. They have the ones that fold back. I had that, and that was nice. But you're still messing with it. So I was never. And then you always got to tie it on your bow so you don't forget it. So I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I shot it well. And anyway, I had this Stan Perfects. And I was like, I would love to use this thing, but there's no way I'm gonna like put this thing in my pocket.
Yeah.
And like walk around and try to hunt and be like, oh shit, here comes something. I'm gonna dig this out of my pocket. Like, I didn't have a bino harness. A lot of people, if I had started with a bino harness and I had a little pocket that was right there, then maybe this probably would never have happened. Because I would have just done what everybody else done and just stuck it in that little pocket.
Yep, that's what I do with mine, with my bino harness. I have a pocket right there, stick it right in there.
But I didn't have a bino harness. I was like, rarely did I even use. Now I have a bino harness and the binos and the Windage. I got all the stuff going. But for a long time I didn't, and I would just use, because I can only shoot 40 yards. And if I saw an animal far away, I would just use my rangefinder with enough magnification to be like, okay, I could identify it. And then I would, because I would bring binoculars, put them in my pack, and never even pull them out. I did that for a long time. Now I got the I'm using it is nice having the bino harness.
It is. It is a nice upgrade.
Especially with the Windicator right there and everything. And the rangefinder, it gives me a place to have my rangefinder.
It's all nicely centralized location for it.
Yeah.
Instead of having them in different spots and such.
And then you could, I noticed, when I go hunting, if I'm somewhere, I usually always have my backpack, just because it has all sorts of stuff in there. But if I just wanted to just hike, a little ways and hunt, I could just put just the bino harness on, and then that way I have my rangefinder, my Windage, the things that you kind of absolutely have to have, because you got to have the rangefinder. You don't have to, but you can be cussing yourself out afterwards.
Yeah, that happened to me 2 years ago, where I sat down and I had a doe show up at 25 yards, and I eyeballed her at 30, and when I shot, and that arrow would over the top, and it's like my rangefinder was not even 50 yards away. It's like, oh man, it's but I was just kind of happy. It's well, at least it was a clean miss, and I didn't overshoot or anything like that. So now I've kind of learned my lesson to always keep it on me at all times.
Yeah, I had a learning lesson, and I had the rangefinder. Biggest boar I ever had a shot at, it was probably 300, 350. It was big.
Oh, he's a big boy.
And I got behind this oak tree, and it was out in this field walking around. He was kind of coming towards me, and I was hiding behind the tree, and I leaned out and I glassed it, and it was at 63 yards or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's pretty far. But I was like, man, if I let it get too close, he's going to win me and just book it.
True.
But I'm like, it's a pig, if I don't make the greatest shot in the world on it, it's, All right.
Yeah, it's just a
So
pig.
I was like, you know what? I'm like, I'm gonna do the 60 yarder on this thing, because it was a big target and I could hit 60. So I was like, yeah, it's worth trying. It's better. I felt like it was better for me to take the 60 instead of getting burned at 30. You know what I mean?
True, very true. And plus, then if you make the connection, it's like I shot him at 60 yards and he dropped within
Yeah.
however far.
So anyway, I ranged it and then I got back behind the tree and I drew back and then I leaned out. And so it was kind of eating and walking at the same time. And it was kind of quartered towards me real hard. So I didn't have a shot. And it was basically getting closer. It was just, had its head on the ground, just grazing, kind of walking closer, closer, closer. And then finally it turned broadside. And I put my 60 pin on it and I was like, oh, it looks a little high. And I'm like, oh, but I just ranged it at 63 and he only took, he only came like 5 yards closer. And I'm like, it's 60. And I shot and it just went right over that side. So I went to where he was standing when I took the shot. It just took off as soon as the arrow went over. And then I ranged the tree and he was at 50. And so
there it is.
Just like the thing only took like 3 from my memory. It seemed like it only took like 3 like paces. But like if you step like a yard every pace, that's like 10 yards. So what I learned from that is, you want to range right before you take the shot, and then there was nothing at that time. There was no other things out in the field for me to like, ideally, if you're in a spot and you're waiting for something to come in, you can range like some bushes and
when you're bored, you're sitting there, you're ranging every single thing. So if it shows up, it's like, well, if he hits this tree, it's 30.
Yeah,
it's this tree, it's 15. You can go and so on and so forth.
But he was in an open field, so I didn't have that. But I learned to try to range at the right before the shot, but also trust. So I shoot a fixed pin sight, and I have a dial sight on the bow. I take the tack because you kind of need it. And I was really impressed when I have some friends that are from Utah that used to work here. They would fly back and forth every week. Really good dudes. Saxon, he has precision archery out of Cedar City, and they could dial that 252 yards and get instead of gapping in between, and so I definitely could see the value of the precision for those in between shots.
Have you got
getting one?
I was going to ask you before we move on, like, have you gotten a chance to check out the EZV side?
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Ben loves that thing. It's like, and I've watched a lot of videos on it. My Jeremy from Bourbon State Outdoors, his daughter has it, and I think he's going to get one too as well. But it's like you're able to range everything without actually having to range it based off the sight pattern. Yeah. And it's very easy to sight in, to kind of build that muscle memory and such. And I've been playing in the back of my mind about getting one for my wife, but I just got her a 4X magnifier, and she's actually liking it. She's able to actually with her prescription, it seems to be complementing each other. Now I have one of mine, my 4X, and it's like when I'm looking through it, it's like it's all fuzzy. So it's like, well, it sounds like my eyesight's still good.
Clarifier.
Now,
you got a clarifier?
Not yet. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Like the clarifier.
That's the thing. Like when I was at my bow shop, the guy I was talking to, he's knowledgeable, but it's not his specialty. So it's we weren't able to quite pinpoint what would make sense for me. And I also thought of like, well, maybe this 4X is too strong for me. Maybe dropping down to a 2X. But no, I'll go in and when one of the guys are working and ask them like, hey, this is what I'm enduring. What do you recommend for and upgrade my peak from there?
Yeah. So I have a Montana, this is expensive bad boy right here. Montana black gold with the lens. This is what I shoot tack with. Okay. And then it has a clarifier in the peep. And so if you just look through the lens without looking through the clarifier, like it's just blurry. Like I couldn't shoot.
Exactly. So that's a lesson learned from there. So it's like I'll just go back in there and they have
nice. You get spoiled having that magnified view, you know.
Well, I've noticed my eyes are just are just not what they used to be and such, and I just want to have that confidence because here in Wisconsin you could use a magnifier for hunting, and it's like I just want to have that ethical shot. So when I draw back, I know like I've shot enough animals where I'm not too concerned about it, but I just want to have that extra level of confidence. So this way, when I draw back and range everything, I'm not going to feel like I'm going to be off target or I'm going to shoot high, shoot low. It's going to be true.
So for tack, it really helps because they love to take the targets and put them in the bushes super far away, like super obstructed. And so with just your naked eye, you're just seeing like this brown. I mean, you can see the target, but you're shooting at a patch kind of, you know what I mean? But when you have it magnified, you can actually see the thing. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So it makes it way, way better. The only thing it didn't make better was when it rained last year in South Dakota. It was dumping. And normally, so what I do, I learned that if I don't cover the lens up, it gets all dusty. So I happen to have this, when you buy pairs of sunglasses, sometimes they give you these like socks.
Oh yeah.
And it just works perfect. And so if I would have had something like this, like in between targets, I could have just slapped it on and it would have kept the water out of it. But when I was packing, I was like, oh, I don't need this thing. Why would I need that? You know what I mean?
No, do the lenses
going down the hill, like trying to dry the thing?
Right. Now, on those lenses, do they have a special film on there, or can you put like a squirtle of Rain-X on it?
You could, but I don't think it would help you because the Rain-X just,
Beats
it
off.
helps it beat up. Yeah, you just need to, if like you just need a little thing to put over it. Like when you're, so the reason it gets the water in it is not when you're shooting, because when you're shooting, you have it like this. So, the rain's not going in the sight, but when you're hiking around, it's like a bucket.
That's so true.
It's just filling up with water.
Yeah,
if you just have something to put over it when you're hiking around, you should be fine.
Yeah, that's what happened to. I shot last year one of the HJ USA events. It was just downpour. I mean, all three of us were just soaked. We were the last ones to come off the field, and he had the whole kit and caboodle. And his situation was the same exact way, but he had a big, nice bow cover and stuff like that. But it's like he still struggled. Me and the other guy, we just single pin, ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, so that's another. So I went to South Dakota last year. I went the year before, and the year before it was mid 70s. It gets pretty hot. I mean, it might have been mid 80s, 85. Yeah, mid 70s isn't too hot. But when you're on that hill in just the direct sun, if there's no breeze, like you just start cooking. And so I was expecting it to be like that. I mean, you only get so much. Usually those ski resorts are so high in the mountains that like the weather forecasts aren't really any good, because the weather changes so much. One cloud comes by and boom, it's supposed to be 90 degrees, it's raining. Like if you go to Utah, like when I went to Utah the year before, it was like 90, and then at 4:00 it started raining. Luckily I was back, eating my hamburger at this point. But there's still people on the hill. But anyway, this last time I was in South Dakota, I was there. I always would get there a little early so I could kind of cruise around and explore, because I'd never really been out there too much. And it was just monsooning, and I was like, man, I brought a jacket, a rain jacket. It's Bass Pro Shops, my hunting little lightweight rain jacket. I didn't bring the pants that I have for it. I just brought it just, in case it sprinkled or something, And I've had that jacket for over 10 years. And I know, like, with a lot of rain, you're going to start feeling some moisture, and that's all I had. And like the night before, it was like pouring, and I was like, man, maybe I could like get on Amazon and like overnight some rain gear. And I could have. It would have been there a little late. Actually, I could have got, if I would have thought ahead of time. I landed in Rapid City, and they have shields and cabela's. Yeah. I could have got something, but it wasn't raining. It was 100 degrees when I got there.
That's the last thing on your mind.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking, I need rain gear. I went up in the hills, then it started raining. But anyway, while I was shooting the second day, I met these cool guys from Colorado, and it started sprinkling again. And one of the guys gets in his backpack and whips out rain gear, gets in this rain gear, and like he's like 10 feet away, and he's like blending in. I'm like, dude, that camo pattern is sick. Like,
yeah,
who makes this rain gear you have? And he's like, oh, SKRE. I'm like, SKRE. Okay, well, so I ended up getting that, and I love it. It's super lightweight, good stuff. There from Utah, I believe. Yeah, it's good company. SKRE. I got a lot of their gear. I got their pants, their jacket. Them and Numa, I really like both those companies. Sitka, so they're expensive. They make good stuff.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they are.
So when I got back, there was a lot of people that were in South Dakota, and they had they had Sitka like gear on. It was like this newer pattern. It's like a white tail. It's got like some white in it, because I guess for like when you're up in the sky. But it looked like it was such a cool looking pattern. Like, yeah. I just wanted to walk, I'm like, I'll wear that, like, when I go out to eat, I see girls wearing it. I'm like, damn, she's hot. She's got the pattern. Well, I got to be cool like that. I got to get that pattern. So anyway, I couldn't, I was like, do I want the Sitka or so first I bought the SKRE, because it was like half the price of a Sitka. And I was like, man, I got to get the Sitka. And so it actually worked out. So the Sitka that I bought, they actually make different rain gears. So the SKRE rain gear I got was like a lightweight packable that like goes into like a little thing. The Sitka, I ended up getting the downpour, and it's like a canvas jacket. Actually, it's solid. But it would be something I would wear as a jacket, like in a tree stand. Like, yeah. The lightweight stuff I would not wear unless it was like summer in a tree stand, So I was telling you, I did the hunt through Chad Mendez. I went to Indiana. That was crazy. So I got to learn about the tree stand life. So
it's not very fun, but it's cool. We can do,
it was pretty, a lot of learning about, some being way up in the trees and everything. Like some of those were pretty high, but you got the, you put the harness little thing on, and you go up there so you don't feel too bad. But like one of the trees I sat in, the first tree I sat in, there was like a little branch like out in front of me.
All right.
And so I felt that I've climbed, I'm not really like scared of heights. I used to climb climb way up trees and stuff like that. And so I didn't have any problem with that stand so much, because it had that little branch. So if I like felt out of balance, I could just like, grab the little branch, you know what I mean? And then like the next day, every day I was in a different stand. The next day I was in this one that was like probably 5 feet higher. So it was way up there.
Okay.
Extra 5 feet, makes you feel, you're like, woo. But there was nothing. Like, you basically just have the chair. and the tree behind you. And we were drinking every night.
That happens, yeah.
So I'm, it's 5 a.m. and I'm like, oh man, I just want to lean my head against. Oh, there's nothing to lean my head against. Like, oh, well, this is super sketchy. But what I learned is that, so the cool thing about those tree stands is you can like put the seat up and then stand up. And then I just turned and faced the tree, and the tree had a big Y in it. And so I basically became a tree hugger. I just hang my bow up, and then I just, I kind of grabbed the tree and just, I felt so much more comfortable holding on to the tree because I felt like I was climbing the tree. I'm not going to like fall off, and I just did that for a while just to kind of, I would do that for just, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And then I would sit back down, and then every once in a while I'd have to go hug the tree.
Yeah, I know those feelings where you get up and you feel the alcohol still sloshed around your stomach. It's like, oh, there it comes, there it is.
Well, plus the bucks could have been coming in from the other side. Like there's a whole other view once you like stand up and look the other way, so you kind of got to look around and everything. But it was interesting. So I understand, like, so in California, no one's really sitting in tree stands. It's mainly spot and stock, and so I kind of understood that, a lot of the people in the Midwest, they hunt tree stands and they hunt, handheld releases, and they just hang them on their D loop and their day's over. So when I first came out with my invention, which we haven't talked about too much, but I contacted Archery Talk. I was going to advertise. So you can't post on Archery Talk about your sweet invention.
Yep, that is so true.
Pay them money, they'll be like, you're not like, everyone wants to be the police there. They're like, you're not a vendor, you can't sell them.
Yeah, that
so
happens a lot.
I used to post on there a long time ago, so I knew I couldn't just get on there and be like, check it out,
Mm-hmm. Oh yes.
So I figured I would talk to them first and see, it's $100 for me, and then I can just like talk about it. Well, no, it's like $2,000.
Oh wow.
or more. Yeah. I was like, so anyway, he gave me the menu of, oh, you want to be a vendor? And I'm like, okay. And it was like $2,000 or $3,000 to be able to vendor there, and then, or you could pay. It was like a little bit less, $1,500 or something. It ended up being $2,000 once they tacked on this other fee.
It's all digital, but here's another fee.
But they're like, oh, we will write an article about your product, and then we'll put it on, and we'll share it around the internet and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, sweet, I'm gonna do it, And so I paid them a bunch of money, and I thought that they were gonna I was gonna send them my product and they were gonna evaluate it, and then write about it. And no, they're like, oh, send us some pictures. And so they just wrote an article based on the pictures. They never even seen one.
Well, that's kind of pointless.
Yeah. So anyway, I was kind of disappointed with that, but the article was okay. Like they get your approval for the article. So they tried to, they ask you how do you want it written, fun, or this and that. It's kind of whatever. But so they basically wrote. It's still on there. There's an article, and they basically talk about how it's not to forget your release is basically the way they marketed it. Which that's one of the great selling points of the invention, but that's not why I invented it. We started talking about why I invented it. I didn't want to keep it thumb release in my pocket, so I didn't finish that part. So in order, I was like, if I'm going to use this and hunt with it, I want to attach it to my bow, and I want to be able to grab it, shoot, put it back, no hassles. And then then I have the same access with this that you did with your index finger, you know?
Correct.
And so I was like, if I can do that, then I will be super happy with this. So I'm an engineer, and we had 3D printers at the place I worked at the time. And a few of the projects I had worked on involved like a robot, like picking things up and moving it. And one of the things we did for the robot to pick something up and then put it on the dock station to keep it, to help it like not screw up, is we put a magnet on it, and that helped it stick, you know, locate. Even if the robot was like a little bit off or something, it kind of just helps it, you know.
Makes sense. Yeah.
You know, and I was like, man, this, you know, I might be able to do something like that with this thing, you know, a docking station.
There you go. Perfect. That's a good analogy.
And so I took a magnet, and I was like, oh, wow, yeah, the jaw is steel, and this button back here is steel. So I'm like, oh, I can easily put 2 magnets on there. So then I went and 3D printed up something, and I was like, oh, that's not going to work. I had to saw the front of it off. And I was like, okay, it kind of works, you know? And then I, you know, refined it a little more and more till it worked. And then I showed my buddy that gave me, you know, sold me the thumb release. And the first thing he said was, oh man, he's like, he's probably patent. And I was like, oh man, I was thinking the same thing, but I was like, ah, because I've had ideas before about other like outdoor products.
Yeah.
That and I like did all sorts of research about patents, and I read a book about patents. It's called Patent It Yourself. It's a really good book to read. I'm not sure remembering what I read in there, if it was really works for today, but it was a good read. But I knew that you could go to the patent website and just do a search. So this is the first thing you need to do. You have the world's greatest idea. You got to make sure, first thing, before you get too excited, you got to go see if someone else already patented it. And it seems like you could dig around on that website for a long time, and there's like millions of patents like you wouldn't even believe. You're like, what the hell is this? And so I figured, you know, okay, someone's got a patent on this thing, you know, something similar. But I ended up getting on there, and there was nothing, zero, nothing even remote, nothing about a release on a bow. And I was like,
Winner.
So that means it's wide open.
Exactly.
Normally, like when you try to patent something, there'll be something that's kind of like it and something else that's similar to it, but like yours is in between, and you got to try to like squeeze it in there. Mine, there was nothing. So I was like, oh, this is a slam dunk. So
yeah.
So I got in. I had to go find a patent attorney, and I looked in the phone book and drove around, and I don't know, I ended up finding some guy. He was not much of a help. I did like, he did, I absolutely needed him because he did the final, it's got to be official stuff. And they say, and that's what about it cost me, is about $12,000 in different stages, you know.
Yes.
But I did all the drawings myself, and I wrote a lot of it. He rewrote it completely different, because the way I wrote it wouldn't have probably, you know, it's got to be in a perfect format for the patent office, or they'll throw it away.
That's probably where.
So that's why you pay him $12,000.
That's true. Yeah, he lawyered it up for you.
So luckily so after I had this idea, luckily at our my local archery range, my friends from Utah, I was telling you about Saxon, they're like, hey, one of the guys over here, Kirby, he has a product that he patented and he's selling, and he goes to the ATA, and I was like, well, I gotta talk to this guy. So yeah, my now buddy Kirby, he makes something called a slobber knocker.
All right.
And he owns Thump, it's like K Thump Archery. And what he came up with is an aerodynamic blunt tip. So you know what a blunt tip is? They're usually like plastic, and you shoot squirrels with them or whatever.
Correct.
Well, what I didn't realize, so I love blunt tips. If you've ever shot anything with a blunt, there's nothing better. So I've been a big fan of the blunt tip, and I had like packages of them. And my buddy's like, "Oh, you gotta buy slobber." I'm like, "Why am I gonna go buy slobber knockers when I got a package of blunts and I love the thing? Like, I don't need what? Why is this slobber knocker any better?" Well, anyway, I decided, I became friends with Kirby, and I was like, okay, if I'm gonna help him, I try to help him out marketing a little bit because he's an older gentleman.
Right.
He doesn't, he's not hip with technology, so I try to help him out a little bit. But I was like, okay, I'm gonna go do a test of his product, because if I'm gonna tell people something's good, I gotta believe in it, myself.
Yeah, I completely understand that.
So I took one, and then I took a regular blunt, and I went to our local archery range, and I think I even did like a little video of it. And so I shot him at 80 yards at the target, because that's what my buddy was saying. He's like, that's what Kirby was telling me. He's like, "Oh no, those, the blunts that I love." He's like, "Those things will drop, a ton, And I was like, well, I never noticed it,
Okay, yeah.
And he's like, "My blunt, it flies perfect, forever, or damn near forever." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let me check this out." So I went out there, and I put a little patch at 80, because the smaller the aim small, miss small, And I shot a field point, and then the two blunts. And the field point, I was probably low left by like this much at 80, which isn't the greatest shot in the world. I usually shoot a little bit better than that, but 80's not easy, so it's not totally impossible that I'd be that far off. And then I shot the slobber knocker, and it damn near hit the paper.
Nice.
And then I shot I won't use their name, the standard blunt.
Correct.
And it dropped so much that it hit the rubber on the bottom of the target.
Oh, wow. That's a big drop.
Yeah. So I was like, wow. So the one thing that I will say, so one of the things that I like about a standard blunt is that it doesn't penetrate, it bounces off. You know what I mean? The thing that you get more penetration with a slobber knocker, because it's moving faster, and the front of it's not totally flat, so you don't have that flat, so much surface area to distribute. It depends on what you shoot it into, but like squirrels, it knocks the hell out of them. That's what he loves, shooting squirrels. He shoots them in his yard. He shoots them all day. And it screws squirrels up. They're great for shooting squirrels, because you can shoot them he's hitting them at 70 yards with these things.
Kidding.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my little slobber knocker plug. You can get them off of Lancaster Archery. They sell them there. And also he has his own website, Thump Archery. You can get them straight there. But anyway, I should market my own stuff.
Yeah, because we started talking about Ched Mendez, and we were talking about the patent laws, and it's like, let's talk about slobber knocker here. But that's pretty interesting, though. That's like your whole concept is you want to go from release from the bow to the D loop and then back.
Yeah, instant access. And then it also solves the problem of like how you used to always tie. I used to always tie my wrist strap onto my bow so I wouldn't forget it. Because I mean, you drive to the range and you're like, oh!
You've all been there.
I could have swore it was here, but it's not. Oh, so then for years I always tied it to my bow, and by mounting, the release on my bow, and especially my hunting bow has quiver, arrows on it, and so if I pick it up, I can shoot. Like I don't need anything. I don't got to go find anything. It's I've had some people, potential customers that they're tree stand hunters, and they were like, "Oh, they didn't really understand." So a lot of people think of it as just a storage device, and some people just use it for that, and they love it. I've had some customers, they mount it on the wrong side. So in order for you to be able to shoot, it has to be on the quiver side of your bow. Otherwise, you'd have to switch hands to like get it and then switch hands again.
Makes it awkward. Yeah.
Yeah. So you want it on this side, but I've had people mount it on the wrong side, but they all they do is hunt tree stands, and they just want their release on their bow, and they want to know it's there when they get there. And then they take it off and they put it on the T-loop, and they're happy. But if you're gonna go do like tack, or you're shooting a range, or you're walking around, or just shooting, like when I shoot, I shoot and then I just put it back. And I've learned the more I free up my hands, because a lot of times with you just keep it in your hand and you start trying to do some other task, and you have this in your hand and you're not doing the task you were trying to do the way you would do it. It's just a pain. You're like, oh, I got this thing in my hand, I'm trying to do this, when all I had to do was just stick it in here real quick, and so I've learned the more that I put it in here and free up my hands to do other things, it's like having someone standing next to you. Here, let me hold your release for you. Okay, thanks. Here, let me give it back to you.
That's a perfect analogy.
You're ready to go. So yeah, so my original idea, so this is the bow I was shooting when I came up with the idea. And so, because I shoot a fixed sight, and I have a quiver that is a 2-piece quiver, not a single version. So a lot of people, so this is what I found out after I invented the thing, and luckily I waited to do my patent. I put all these different ideas in my patent. So this is bolted directly to my sight. So the mount is designed to bolt directly to these auxiliary holes on a sight.
I see that.
A lot of people bolt their tight slot quiver there, so then that's not accessible, or they're running a dovetail and there's a big knob. So for a lot of people that doesn't work, but it might become a little more prevalent for people like that are now they're putting the sights through the riser, and those holes are open, but it depends on the quiver that they're using. If the quiver, if the arrows go right over that spot, then you can't really do it.
Yeah, but, whether you're using a Matthews or a Hoyt, because they're pretty much the ones that are on par. Because Hoyt uses the Pickaninny, and then Matthews put that rail right into the riser. But for me, this is the best spot. The common user. That's what I see that being. That's this one right here. My Elite has that set up front on my Tetra. So this is the best, in my opinion. I'd love it right here, especially, I don't dial this sight, but especially if you have a dial sight, if you can have right here, because you can dial and then you just grab and shoot. It's like the most efficient hand movement. Like if you ever do any boxing, you don't want wasted movement. Like this is like the most efficient like movement. And the other reasons why I like it up here is it kind of, all your
fragile, expensive stuff is all right here besides your cams. So like, if you're gonna like fall down, you never planned on it, but like, you're gonna try and not slam your sight. You know what I mean? So it just keeps all your valuables in like one place that can kind of focus on. Plus, like when I'm doing spot and stock or whatever, when I'm like hiking around, I like seeing my release just so I know, like, because it's like, I just don't want it to not, even though this thing holds it in there. Like, I don't know, I just always like looking and knowing it's there and seeing it. And I don't have to look down to take my eyes off of where I'm trying to hunt to like be like, okay, is my release still there? So it's always right where I can see it. And I just really like it like that. And so there are ways of mounting it up here if you have a dovetail sight. So if you have a tight spot quiver, if you ask me, or you can get your own, but you can get longer bolts and you can bolt the mount on top of the tight spot quiver metal bracket and just put it right on top of it. It just goes right through. And so you can do that. And I have a few people doing that. And then I was coming out with these clamps that go on the dovetail. Everyone's got different dovetails, so I was gonna have to come out with like 4 or 5 versions of that. But then all these bow manufacturers came out with this new thing where the dovetail goes right into the riser. And so I kind of want to see where that's going before I invest. Like I was telling you earlier, how much it costs to buy a mold. I could dump 20 grand into a mold. And if everybody goes a different way, then I just spent 20 grand and know it's, you just got to throw it. That's another issue is, if I was to dump $20,000 or $10,000 into a mold for a release, like the Stand Perfects, which apparently they stopped selling these.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, they went with the Onyx. I didn't realize that they obsoleted this, but someone was just telling me, they're like, oh yeah, the Perfects is obsolete now. They've sold enough of them to where I could probably, if I made a mold, I could probably still make my money back just on the amount that's out in the world. But like on another release that maybe didn't have a bunch of volume, a little more of an oddball release, if I dumped the money into it and they said, oh, we're gonna come out with a new release, like I could end up eating that. So that's what's nice about having the machined versions. The machined versions are nice for one, like I don't have the huge startup cost with the mold. I can get them out there and get them in people's hands. And then if there's a design change I need to make, changing a mold could cost a couple $1,000. They got to remachine it, or it'd be a lot of money. With the machine versions, like I just change the drawing, and the next time I order them, it's different. So it allows me to do development before I sink a bunch of money into a mold. Right now, I only have, like I told you, I only have one mold. But what I should talk about, so kind of exciting. So I don't shoot a hinge release, and I see tons of people shooting a hinge.
Yeah, that's what is it?
This is the UltraView right here.
UltraView, yeah, because UltraView just came out with a new sight for HHA that mounts onto their Tetra sights. I thought but it's like it's a $300 scope, and it's like no, it's a little, that's a lot.
So when I was at TAC in Utah last year, I met some good people from Texas. And one of the kids, he shot the UltraView, and he's like, dude, he's like, you got to make one for the UltraView. And I was like, yeah, I know. I see on Instagram, everyone's like UltraView. So I'm like, yes, it's like that, and the John Dudley stuff, are big sellers. Mm-hmm. So the first one I came out with was for the Knock to It, but it actually fit also the wise choice and the first choice, which worked out good because it just, you know, multiplied the amount of people I could get out of one, you know, one version.
That's beautiful.
But so one of the issues, well, I guess I should, in order to explain it, I'll have to show you. So basically what I do is, you know, most of these releases have, I can't really see them, it's black. Let me get this one. Here we go. So most of these releases have a steel jaw and then a steel reset button. So you can't really, unless you were to design it custom release and a custom, like it would have to, you kind of need 2 magnets to hold, like one magnet, it'll just fall out.
Yes.
So you need the 2 magnets. So my original design, you know, I've had a magnet on the front and then a magnet on the back, and then I capture it, you know, with the way the mount's designed. And but there's a lot of people that shoot all these tons of different releases, and so every hinge, no hinge has a reset button on it that I know of. So, you know, you have your steel jaw in the front, but there's nothing in the back. Well, they have their, they call it the hunting bracket. I'm not sure how it helps you hunting, but it gives me the opportunity to put hardware because they have this big slot here. So basically, if you have an ultra view and so these are going to be coming, these aren't out yet. These should be ready at the beginning of next month. This will be my ultra view mount. This is a 3D printed prototype right here. The real one's coming. Yeah, so you add this little hardware that I'll give to you to the hunting bracket, and that will line up with that magnet there.
Beautiful.
And boom, then you turn that and lock it in. So I designed this. So this is a large, this is the first version. So I made the prototype and I sent it to the kid in Texas that I met at TAC to have him evaluate it, you know, and so he was super stoked. Well, he's like a lot of people out there that constantly change releases. So he bought the new Ultra View.
Yeah.
So he wasn't shooting this version, he's shooting the Ultra View 2, and he's shooting a medium, and this is a large. And so it actually proved to be an issue. He told me it was thicker, so I made it, you know, I planned on it, you know, working that way. But the medium size difference became a problem. But he sent me some pictures, and I basically adjusted a few things on it, and so it does work. You know, I sent him a new mount after, you know, he told me what was going on, and I made some changes, and so this will work with the medium, you know, the hinge 2, and, you know, it should work with the large, you know, for all 4. So
that helps.
Yeah, it'd be way too expensive. Like every version costs me a lot of money, even the machine versions, because I have to buy, in order to get the machine price down, you have to buy 100. And so you got to come up with that money all at one time.
Yeah, that's
so basically all the money I make from this goes into making a new design, you know, because there's just constantly people are like, what about this one, what about that one?
Yeah, exactly. So, we had a conversation about the 4-fingered edge, and I showed you with a magnet I used where it's like it has the reset pin and the jaws itself for steel, so you can it mounts so you can, you know, connect there, and then on the back where that let me actually just grab it here real fast.
Yeah, I remember you.
Yeah, because you got the jaws right here. These are actually steel. Yeah. But then you have the cylinder back here that actually is metal too as well.
Yeah. So I could make something happen with that.
Yeah. So this right here. Yep. So you got the mount, and then you got this right here. So it likes to travel down, but it's there you go. Or you could do something on the top as well. So it's like you have an opportunity to put the magnet someplace. So this way, then, but everything else, as you can tell, it's all aluminum. So
the biggest obstacle to me coming out, or at least designing new mounts, is buying the releases.
That is so true.
So I recognized that I was sort of working in the dark, doing one at a time. I realized that there's like overlap. So it's possible to make, everyone wants, if I had a magic wand, that's what I would have made, is one mount that works with everything. That's like the holy grail. But all the releases are so different. You'd have to adjust it would become a Mr. Potato Head, and then it would have a million parts, and you'd have to adjust it, and they would fall apart. And it's going to work better for the customer if it's designed to work with the release. But there are some that do overlap, and so I recognize this in order to make my customers and myself happy, because if I can make one work for multiple, everyone's happy.
That is so true. Yeah.
I bought $1,300 worth of releases, and I was able to come up with this. Should be ready this week. And this is my new mount, and I call it the JBC. It's for a Carter, and I call it the Just Be Chocolate. So I don't know if you know anything about Carter releases. They have there's a million of them.
Yes, they are.
And they have one that's called the Just Because.
Oh, all right.
And so I was able to figure out that by buying all these different releases, that these three were similar enough that I could make it work for all three.
Beautiful.
So this will, I think, make a lot of people happy, and including myself. And I might be able to
get an injection for it.
Yeah. This one, because there should be enough volume with all these different versions that it would be worth doing the injection mold for. So yeah, it works with the chocolate addiction. I've had a few people, I ran into people at TAC, and I know a lot of people like that. It works with the chocolate light, and the Just Because.
Beautiful, man. That's awesome.
So,
I saw that you made a TrueFire one, but I don't think the components on the 4-finger edge and the TrueFire one that you made for it actually have enough components to make it backwards compatible. The nice thing is, I bought this in 2018, and they're still making this. They're $100 for the release.
Yeah, so I want to, and I absolutely need to do that. And this is for where I need to bring my business. I mean, I kind of started at the top high-end expensive realm, but really I should be at the cheaper high volume realm. You know what I mean? So like you're saying, those are $100. There's probably a million of them out there.
Yeah, this is my second or third one, because I put it on my D loop and it gets snagged on something and then I lose it.
Yeah. So eventually at some point, I want to start, I don't know if they, it depends on the company and, their interest or whatever. They might just tell me to go pound sand. But if they're interested, I wouldn't mind working with them. And at some point you might be buying your release with the mount. You know what I mean? It'll come with it,
That would be fantastic, to go with it. I know Faraday owns TrueFire, and they own a couple other different ones too. So that's pretty much, they're out of Superior. Well, that's where their distribution center is. I think everything else they make is out of China, or the Philippines, or one of the three, because that's where they don't manufacture up there. But I've been to their location up there, and it seems like nice guys. I guess you have to probably. I wonder if Chris Ham may know them, because it'd probably be a good way to get in contact with them.
Yeah. So at some point I have to. I wanted to go this last year, but I spent all my money on elk hunt. And I got my first elk. So
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Not complaining. And actually, I know the bow hitch guys and Matrix Target. They both went to the ATA. I met the owner of Matrix Targets at TAC. Super nice guy, like one of the best dudes in the world.
Yeah, Armando's coming on the podcast here in the future as well.
Yeah, he happened to just contact me. I guess he just saw my stuff on Instagram, and he said he really liked my stuff, and he just wanted some pointers. And I was like, well, I don't know if I'm the guy to give you pointers. I've been doing this like 6 months. But yeah, they're really good people. And so I think, yeah, I told them I think they met each other at the ATA, because I told them, I'm like, hey, I know you, and you guys should meet up. And so I think they did. But yeah, I wanted to go. If that's what I have to do, is I have to go to the ATA and spend, it probably cost me about $4,000 to get a booth there.
All right.
But it'll be worth it just for the experience and go check it out and everything. Well, I'm still getting into the booth world. So I have a 9-to-5 job, and I only get so much vacation, and I only got so much money to spend on travel.
I know the feeling.
Pick my battles, but I was able to do I did 2 total archery challenges in 2020 during the pandemic. I went to South Dakota, and then I went to Utah. And so my original plan was Dudley.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, if I give it to him and he goes, hey, everybody, look at this. Like, I'll be like, okay, I'll bring the dump truck full of mounts so you can sell them.
Yeah, because if you get to Dudley, then you can get the Joe Rogan effect. Because I had a guest on my podcast, Shea Butler, and he got his knife got out to the bow rack. Well, then Cam Haynes got his knife, and then Cam Haynes introduced to Joe Rogan, and now he works full time. So it's like the Rogan effect is real.
Yeah.
Kind of like with Shure mics. I mean, Shure was just a really good quality overall, but then they got the Rogan effect, because this is a version of what Rogan uses, and they've skyrocketed 30-40%.
Yeah. So my original plan was I didn't get the mold yet, because I was like, okay, I want to show this to Dudley, see what he says. He might want to change something, so I don't want to sink $20,000 into a mold and then have him go, oh, it should be like this. You know what I mean?
That's so true. Yes.
So I was like, okay, I just had some 3D prints. So I went to South Dakota. Well, it turns out he doesn't go to the South Dakota shoot, but I still had a great time, made awesome contacts. And T&K Hunting Gear, I'm sure you're familiar with those guys.
Yes. Yeah, he's a good dude.
Yeah. And Buckstorm and yeah, Ben wasn't there, but yeah, next time I go to South Dakota, we'll stop by and see Ben. So then I went to Utah, and he was there. I got to show it to him. He was definitely intrigued. He was like, he was definitely intrigued. And I gave him my card, and then I came back he was super busy. Like, everyone's like trying to talk to him, and I just got to talk to him for like 2 seconds. I was like, I just want to show you this. I was like, boom. He's like, whoa. He's like, oh, I gotta go. And I was like, oh, I didn't tell him I want him to sell it.
Yeah.
So I came back the next day, and then I showed him my Silverback mount, and he's like, oh, okay, and I talked to him for a little bit. And I left him my number, my card, and he never called me. And I was like, oh, crap. Is he going to come out with his own version or what?
Well, as long as you have it patented, you're a step ahead.
It was still patent pending at the time. And I've heard you can, if you tweak one thing, you could, I tried to make my patents, and I did. I have like one of the biggest, like, my patent attorney's impressed. He's like, I've never seen this before. I put so much stuff into it. They broke it into 12 patents.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
impressive.
so I tried to block out everything.
Yeah, because your biggest competitor will
As much
eventually
as
become
possible.
China.
So I don't know if I'm going to go for all of them because it costs money, but I'm definitely there's some definite cherries in there that I'm trying to pick off. But eventually they did call me after I already had my website and things were actually going pretty good. They reached some guy on Instagram that knows them, hit me up and was like, hey, they want to talk to you. And at that time, so I have a Shopify website, and the default website has no contact page on it, and I didn't really realize it. So there was no way for anyone to contact me unless they knew my email or whatever, you know. And I was like, oh crap! So I had to look on YouTube and watch a video on how to add the contact page onto my Shopify. So I fixed that so people can actually get a hold of me now. But yeah, I talked to them and they were interested, but they were, so one of the issues is like for the Silverback is, it doesn't have a thumb it doesn't have the reset button.
Okay.
So ideally what they would want, and I would want too if I could make it happen, but it's impossible, is one mount that works for both the Silverback and the Noctuit. And I ended up, after our conversation, I left them their vice president a message, and I was like, well, I can make these things happen, but you'd have to change the design of like the Silverback release to make it work. So what I've done with the Silverback release, I don't have one in front of me, is I have this. This is basically the same thing. So this is the Evo 20.
All right.
Basically, a Silverback, you cut this off, and that's a Silverback.
Oh, all right. I see. Yeah,
and you turn it silver. Well, so that's what the original version of the Silverback was. And so if you look on this one side, the original version had big flathead screws. And I knew the Silverback was super popular. And one of the guys, when I first started this, he had one and he let me take it home. He told me it was the same as the Noctuit. So my original mount that was supposed to be for the Noctuit, I tried to design using a Silverback, and people say they're not nothing sort of the same. It doesn't work. But anyway, like they look similar, but like look at the jaw on this and the jaw on that, and then like the profile's different, and there's no reset button. Like for mount purposes of making a mount, they're totally two different fish. So anyway, I was able to make a mount for the Silverback by just having a magnet that would attract to that hardware.
There we go. Okay.
And it worked with the first version, and then they came out. Then I bought a Silverback, and they changed from the big flathead screws to these socket head cap screws. And I was like, oh no, is that going to screw it all up? But it still worked fine. Oh, except for they changed it to a stainless steel screw.
Ooh.
For some reason. And the stainless steel is not magnetic. So when you buy the Silverback mount, it comes with a screw. I give you two just in case you lose one. And you just change that screw and then it works.
Oh, that's simple compromise.
But then they came out with the third version of the Silverback, the Silverback Plus, and they basically added a lanyard hole.
Okay.
And then they moved the screw, doesn't even exist. So I was like, oh, I'm hosed now. But I came up with a way. Maybe I should run upstairs and go get that bad boy.
Go for it.
Okay. So here is a Silverback.
I see that.
And this is like the second version, as socket head cap screws. And then this is the Silverback Plus. So it has a lanyard hole. So what I do is I give you a piece of tubing and a flathead screw, and you push the tubing into the hole just till it gets to the other side, and then you screw the screw into the tubing.
I see that.
And then it's totally flat, like it doesn't stick up at all. And that gives you a nice fit.
That's awesome.
So you don't have to, by doing this, you don't have to drill, modify. You're not harming the release. You could take this apart and like your release is identical. You know, you don't have to do anything, you know, tool wise to your release. So I thought that was a really clever, good, you know, way of doing that.
My True Ball Max Pro Plus, they put in a lanyard hole for it, and it comes with lanyard, but I took the lanyard off because I don't like the lanyard. It's like, well, it's like it's a wrist strap without all the extra stuff with it. So then if you ever were to make a mount for that particular one, well, then you already have the fix for it.
So yeah, so if the release has a lanyard hole, I could potentially make it work. So I actually did this. So this is the stand Perfects, and so this is the thumb button version. So if you buy one of my mounts, it actually just attracts to the reset button in here. But they make the resistance version. Okay. It looks just like this, except for there's no reset. So it wouldn't work in the mount. It would fit in the mount, but it would just fall out. And so I was like, okay, well, but it has a lanyard hole. You won't see the lanyard hole so what I did, it's a really small button head screw, and then there's a nut that just sits flat right there.
I see that.
So, so I do make mounts. I haven't put them on my website yet. I have a couple people using it. So basically, if you add this hardware, I get rid of the one magnet, and I put a magnet that's on the body. And then, so a lot of people shoot resistance and thumbs. I don't. I just stick to one.
Yeah, I just shoot thumbs too. I haven't developed target panic, so that's why I see why they have the back tension release. So
with this setup, you could use the same mount and have work with your resistance and your thumb. And so I'm still playing with this, you know. So yeah, I'm not sure if I want to go that direction with well, now they don't even make the stands Perfects. Now they're on the Onyx, and it doesn't have a lanyard hole. So I don't know where. Stan has so many curveballs. I really love their stuff, and I know a lot of people use them, and I want to make mounts I'll get to the stands. So I have a couple people trying. They're using like a SX3, and the shoot off will fit in the 3 Wiseman mount, and sometimes I got to push the magnet, stick it out a little bit farther, and it works just fine, but you can kind of like wiggle it around. I did a little video for somebody about it, but I just like everything to be tight, you know. So I kind of want to come out with one specifically for it, so that way it's tight. But the problem is that they make 3 different sizes of the release, you know, and then there's different versions, and so it's like I almost need to buy like $1,000 worth of stands and come up with a mount. Yeah, they're not making my life easy.
No, they're not. It's like you almost need to start donating plasma at BioLife or some type of a program like that.
Well, one thing that I've gotten lucky, I haven't had to do it recently, because I was able, for the JBC mount, I was able just to tweak my 3 Wisemen and eyeball it. But one thing that I did do is my buddy owns a sheet metal shop, and he actually makes my the sheet metal brackets. and it's a really big fancy shop. And when I was visiting once, they have this inspection table. It's a big glass table, and it's got like a laser scanner in it. So when they're making parts, they can just set them on the glass table and it'll measure them.
Oh, beautiful.
And then it puts out a file that it compares to like a drawing or a solid model or something like that. So at one point I took like 5 releases down there, and I had to take like the thumb button off so it'd sit flat. And we just put them on there and scanned them. And then I was able to make 3D models of the release and then design the mount to fit it instead of just eyeballing everything and printing over and over and again. And that helps a lot. That's all part of the design. So back to like the Chad story. So my initial plan was to meet Dudley, and I didn't know if I would meet him at TAC. I'd never been to a TAC.
Okay.
And I knew Chad knew Dudley. And I wanted to go on a hunt.
Yeah.
But I was like looking at his website, and I was like, man, all these things are like super expensive. You know, I can't afford this one. I can't afford that one. And but I kept going back to his website and looking and looking and looking. And then I noticed that he had this Indiana whitetail hunt. And it was only, I forget what the exact price. It was like less than $3,000. And I was like, and it was for almost a week. Like it was at least 5 or 6 days. And you got to stay at Brad Miller's lodge in Indiana, and Dan Henderson, the UFC fighter, was going to be there.
Oh, no shit. That's pretty cool.
I was like, and it was on my birthday.
Even better. Merry Christmas. Happy birthday.
And I was like, holy cow. I think it was less than $3,000. I think it was like a little over 2 or something. It wasn't that bad. Like I mean, you couldn't hunt a deer in California for that price.
No, you couldn't. Not even in Wisconsin, you couldn't even get that price.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is worth doing, you know? And then I'm like, oh, I'll get to meet Chad, and I can show him my thing, you know? And if I don't run into Dudley, it's a good plan B, you know? So I bought the hunt, and I ended up getting Chad's phone number as paying him and all this stuff. And I ended up sending him a meme. I made this meme, like the Matrix, Morpheus.
Okay.
He's like, what if I told you?
Oh, yes.
You know,
red pill, blue pill scene. Yeah.
I made this meme that said, what if I told you didn't have to put your release in your pocket anymore? And I sent it to Chad because I had his phone number. And he's I figured he was gonna be like, what the fuck's this guy? You know, is he smoking drugs or something? And I'm like, you ready to see it? And he's like, oh yeah, show me what you got. You know, and so I went and I just made a little video. I took my GoPro up to my hunting spot and I did a video just so I could send it to Chad. And he was instantly like, oh, dude, that's badass. I want one. And I was like, yeah. And so then, like, I was texting him, you know, every once in a while and stuff like that. And then I was like, oh, you know, I can't wait, you know, for Indiana. He's like, oh, I'm not going. And I was like, what? So if you look at his hunts, they schedule certain, he doesn't do every hunt because but he has celebrities. So Dan Henderson, he had 2. I'm like, oh, well, okay, Dan Henderson's going to be there. And then also Brad Miller. I don't know if you know who.
I'm Jake with HHA Sports, and today we're going to talk a little bit about our Dovetail Sights and how they're going to fit on the new Matthews V3X. So as you'll see, I have a Tetra Max Tournament Edition sight on this 33-inch V3X. All of our Dovetail sights, the Tetra and the Tetra Max, will fit on the V3X. Also, in the next couple of weeks, you'll see us come out with a shorter Dovetail version. It'll just be our short bar version, which will also fit on the V3X on both the 29 and 33-inch model. One question that we've gotten pretty frequently lately is the windage adjustments on your Tetra and Tetra Max bow sights on the new Matthews bow. And this year we came out with the infinite adjust plate, which you'll see on the front end of your sight. So when you put this infinite adjust plate on, you'll want to either flip it to the inside or the outside. And for the inline mounting sight options, such as the V3X, you're going to want to make sure that the infinite adjust plate is to the outside of your infinite adjust channel. This will allow for optimal windage adjustments. So you'll also be able to find the infinite adjust bracket on our website if you're already shooting a Tetra or Tetra Max Tournament Edition sight. Another way that you can get your HHA to fit V3X is by buying our conversion kit, which you can find on our website at hhasports.com. We'll be selling those at retail around $60. So basically the only thing you'll have to do is you'll have to take apart your sight at the third access point, and you can convert any Tetra or Tetra Max sight. So if you have a fixed frame, you can get that into a Dovetail. So like mentioned before, any Dovetail sight will fit a Tetra or a Tetra Max, as well as our short bar version. For more information, you can visit our website at www.hhasports.com.
Brad Miller is. I didn't know who he was at the time.
It doesn't ring a bell, but it's like I've probably seen him.
So
Is he a UFC fighter?
No. He played on the Sacramento Kings. Chad lives up by Sacramento. He's a basketball player, really tall, white kid from Indiana. He's like super into hunting, and he had his own hunting TV show.
No kidding.
Country Boy Outdoors. Yeah. And I never heard of him, you know. And then and he's good friends with some other outdoor TV show people. I forget the name of their TV show is, but if you watch those hunting shows, they're on there all the time. I just clicked on the TV last night and I see this gun sticking out of a blind, and it's got this like a limb saver on the barrel, and I'm like, oh, that's got to be Brad. And sure enough, he's the only person I ever seen with one of those things. But yeah, I got to go out there, and so anyway, I spent a week out there, and I got to show Brad Miller and Chad's business. Chad has a business partner, Mike, who's a really good dude. And so I basically, you know, hung out all week with Mike and Chad and Dan and a few other hunters. And, you know, Mike was like, dude, it's a sweet idea. And so I've been talking with Chad, and he is super interested in like repping my mount and blowing me up. And I'm all about it. But it almost sounds dumb. I'm like, no, don't blow me up. I'm trying to like ramp, you know, if he blows me up too fast, I can't do my job. Which sounds like, you know, just quit your job. Well, I just got a new job and I make stupid money at my job. And it would be as much money as I could make with this. It would be, I need to at least, I got to time it right so I can transition out of what I do and have this viable to take over what I make. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Because you live in California, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it ain't cheap.
No. It'll get there, but like it actually works out because, like, you know, before I got this new job, I was kind of like, you know, betting on this to take off, and then I was gonna quit my other job and do that, which is not a bad plan. But now that I got the new job, it's like now this is more of a just kind of like I'm like, okay, I have to be serious about the new job, and this is more of on the back burner fun thing.
Okay.
It's still growing. Like I had my best month last month, and it's like all of my sales are pretty much generated by people showing other people.
Okay.
Like, it sells itself. Like, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I know. It's like after St. Ben's, it's like if you made one for mine, it's like I already have one. And
So the thing that I've found out though, as great of an invention it is, and as good as it sells itself, is people. It's a little bit so far out of the box that people don't understand it, especially when they see just a picture of it. They're just like, oh, it's a thingy that holds your release. They don't know that it's magnetic, right? Like it doesn't scream, hey, I'm magnetic and this is how it works. Like it's total different reaction when I'm at the archery range and I show somebody versus like somebody, like I've hit people up on Instagram. I see they have the knock to it and I'm like, dude, I have the mount for you. And they're like, get out of here. You know what I mean? And I'm like, but every time I show someone, they want to buy it. I gotta get it. You know, so there's this gap, you know, you just need it's also, you know, depends on who's telling you. Like if Chad gets on there and says, you can buy this, and people will be like, oh, I gotta buy it.
right. That is so true. That is so true.
But if I say it, they're like, who's this guy? I'm not buying that thing. But yeah, luckily it sells itself. So I just have become sort of friends with so last year I did Park City Tack in Utah, and I didn't realize I'd done you know, 2 in South Dakota, and then I did Snow Basin during the pandemic, which was in Utah because they couldn't do Park City, and it was a big event. And so I'd never done Park City until last year, and that's like a whole nother level. It was crazy. And there's a lot of famous people there. And so the one morning, the Black Rifle Coffee Company was there.
Okay.
And they had their tent. And they give away free coffee. Imagine that. So I had I had a little later knock time. And I was walking around. I tried to find people, be like, hey, check this out, you know. And I was like, well, I'm gonna go get some coffee. You know, I've got time to kill. And so I went to the tent and they're like, oh, the coffee's not ready. It'll be like, you know, 10, 15 minutes, you know, and we'll have some coffee. And they had this big, huge tent with all these chairs. And there was like 7 or 8, you know, people hanging out in there. Nobody actually, Evan, the owner, Evan
Hafer. Yeah.
He was there. He was the only guy I recognized. And then, so I was like, oh, okay, I'll hang out in the Black Rifle Coffee tent for a while, you know. So I hung out for a while, and eventually I was like, hey guys, check this out. You know, and Evan was like, oh man, I gotta get one of those. You know, we had a good conversation. I had a good conversation with a few people. Well, one person that was in there, which, you know, he was just someone in the tent. He ended up buying a mount like a month or 2 later. He just ordered it, and I didn't even put it together. So when I saw the order, I saw the name, and I'm like, hey, that name sounds really familiar.
Okay.
Let me get on Instagram and look that up. Dallas Hemmeyer. And I'm like, he's got like, I'd have to look at it. He's got, I don't know, 30,000, more than 30,000, 80,000 followers. He's got a lot of followers.
Gnarly. Nice.
I was like, oh man, this guy's getting a free hat for sure. So anyway, I sent him a mount and a hat, and he like messaged me on Instagram, and he's like, dude, I freaking love this thing. I was like, oh, sweet. And then he went and shot an elk with John Dudley. And or maybe that wasn't with Dudley. He did with Dudley once. I'm not sure if that one was with Dudley. But he's like he's into photography and film. He films all these high-end hunts in like Africa and all this stuff. That's all he does is follow people around and film their hunts. And he has his own like YouTube channel and stuff like that.
Adam Greentree, I know he's an avid archer, and he's a genius.
So anyway, so Dallas knows all these people. Like he knows Dudley, the black. He's like in with the black rifle. He knows everybody. I have no idea. So he was just I just seen on his Instagram. I was like him and Chad. I think he knows Chad. They were all at. I don't know if you saw the. What's everyone got the Traeger grills? Traeger just had some big launch party. I guess it was in Utah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in Utah. And they had ZZ Top play. It was the most extravagant event I have ever seen. I wasn't there. I just seen pictures of it online. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I want to be part of the Traeger. You know? But anyway, good connection to have. So anyway, Dallas loves the mount. He's taken pictures, some of the pictures on my, Instagram, and I post them in my videos. Like he took a picture of his elk with the mount, on his bow and everything. And
that's awesome.
So I was been talking to him, and he's like, oh yeah, my wife designed stickers. So his wife designed. I don't know if you've seen the stickers that I started including. Maybe I should go grab them real quick because they're pretty bitchin'. I had people they actually wanted, like, I think I've had a couple people buy mounts just to get the sticker.
That's awesome. So let's see these badass these stickers.
So Dallas's wife is they're both artists, and one of the things she does is she designs stickers and stuff. And so I was talking to Dallas, and he's like, yeah, you want me to design a sticker? And he's like, what? And so I actually use the picture that you took, and make a sticker. So his wife makes this sticker.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I've seen that on your Instagram feed.
And then he wanted to do a giveaway, and it was right when the Dudley came out with his gold knock to it.
Okay.
And we're like, oh, okay, that's what we got to do. So I bought a gold knock to it, and then he had his wife make some gold knock to it stickers.
Oh, those are pretty. Those are really nice renders.
Yeah. And then we got the regular AOT logo. But yeah, anyway, I've been talking with Dallas a lot, and so he happened to mention or something. I didn't realize. I knew he did the filming of hunts, but I guess he also offers some guided hunts. And I was like, oh, really? I'm like, I want to go hunt with Dallas.
Why not?
So I looked at his website or whatever, and he does. I'm not sure what all the stuff he offers, but the one that I'm going to go on is it's a axis deer hunt in Texas.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and it's like in July, and that's kind of and we're doing it with a bow. So yeah, that should be a lot of fun. I'll finally get to hang out with them and talk, face to face. And just it'll be. I never really until I started doing this mount thing. I never really traveled a whole bunch. I grew up in California. I would go to Oregon. I drove up to Montana a couple times. I had some friends that moved up there. But that's kind of the only loop that I ever did. And then since I could start trying to write this stuff off on my taxes.
That is
'Cause
true.
I got a business license now. Then I started doing, I went to South Dakota twice, fell in love with that place. I was like, I want to move here.
It is definitely gorgeous. Like Montana is like the place to be because of all of the animals you get to hunt.
Yeah. So I've landed in Texas on like a layover, but I've never like done anything in Texas or been anywhere. So this will be my first Texas experience. So I'm looking forward to that. And so anyway, this is kind of like a big loop. So when I did the hunt in Indiana, I met this guy, Parker, who's from Texas. He was one of the hunters, and I sold him one of my prototypes. It was funny. So he showed up late, and we'd already hunted a couple days, and he just kind of showed up, and then we like went hunting the next morning, and and then he came back. We're all hanging out at the lodge, and they're like, "Hey, show Parker your thing." I'm like, "Okay." I run downstairs, go grab it, come back up.
Okay.
And it turns out he shot a knock to it, and that's what I had. My first one was for the knock to it, and I'm like, here, check it out. And he's like, "Dude," he's like, "all morning I was in this tree stand wishing I had something like this." So he's like, "I will buy this right now." It's like, yes. So anyway, he bought it, and then he went back to Texas, and but we stayed in touch, and we were all gonna go back the next year, but the stuff happened. He couldn't make it, and then everyone ended up flaking out. So we ended up not going back to Indiana. But I happened to be texting him last year about Indiana. I'm like, "Hey, excited, it's only 6 months away."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, did I invite you on the elk hunt?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You want to go elk hunting?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but I got no money and I got no vacation." So, I don't know how that's gonna work. And he's like, "Oh, dude, you gotta go." He's like, one of the guys, because he set up the hunt already, and you have to have like 3 hunters, and one of the people bailed out, so his whole hunt was kind of like dependent on someone else filling the void. And I was like, I'm like, I want to go, but I can't commit to, I'm like, I don't got the money. Like, this is not good. I'm trying to do the business. I can't, it's like taking all my money, and I can't just be like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to, go on this extravagant elk hunt." And he's a salesman, and he does pretty well. He's got a couple companies and stuff like that. But he's like, he wouldn't let up. And then eventually he's like, "I'll tell you what, I'll pay $1,000 towards your hunt if you go." And this is for a hunt in New Mexico at like a place that they film TV shows at. And I had never shot an elk. So I was like, okay, it looks like I'm going elk hunting.
That's awesome.
So I had put just about all of it on my credit card. I had like a few $1,000 that I was able to kick in cash, but then the rest was like I think I'm just about finished paying it off. But it worked out. It was my first time I've been to New Mexico, and I ended up getting an elk and a bear.
That's awesome, man. That's fucking sweet.
Yeah. There's a video I was able to film me getting the bear myself, and then I could have filmed me shooting the elk, but I just filmed after. I was like, I'm not screwing this up. I'm like, screw the camera. I'm just shooting this thing.
I don't blame you.
And but I could have definitely filmed it, but I just didn't want to, like, I'm like, that's not my priority right now. It was crazy. So I mean, it wasn't easy, even though we were, at this, world famous place. I mean, we hunted hard. It was like on the 6th day. It was there was like another day or two before the end of the hunt. And I was the only one that got one.
Wow.
It was like the only opportunity. And so it was a weird bull. It wasn't like everyone like 6x6. So we were on top of this hill. We had bugled some in before, and they would come right up. You couldn't see them, but you could hear them, and they were bugling. And then the wind would switch, and they would, they'd just ruin it. And so we'd had some encounters in that spot before, and so we came in and we hiked in a little further. Normally we kind of drove all the way in, but this time we kind of parked back, and then we walked in, and we sat down, and the guy bugled, and not a peep, no noise, nothing. We're like, oh, okay, let's just get up and move, down the ridge farther. And we stand up, and there's an elk standing there looking at us. We're like, and the elk's like, oh. He turns around and trots off, and we're like, oh, dude, he was right there. He was coming right in, but he just wasn't making any noise, and it was amazing. Like, his walk, like, he didn't snap a twig, nothing. Like, thing was like just totally silent. And so, but it looked like what they call a raghorn. We saw like it had one big spike on one side, and then it looked like it had like like 3 on the other side or something. It was kind of like a weird. It wasn't like 6x6 trophy,
Yes.
But on day 6, I'm like, I'll shoot that son of a. And the guy's like, really? Because they get a lot of high-end guys that they ain't shooting nothing under a 340 or what. I can't even tell what a 340 is. So.
that's usually like a 6x5, 6x6, a 5x5. They're pretty big.
I'm just like, it's an elk. If it's brown, it's down.
That's a good old Iowa mentality right there.
So anyway, he's like, you'll shoot it? And I'm like, oh no, yeah, you get that thing anywhere near me, it's dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, go down the hill, and then I'll try to call him in. So I went down the hill, stood next to a tree, and he starts bugling and cow calling. And a couple of minutes later, that sucker pops out of the bushes, and still, I never heard a sound of twig break. The thing moved like a ghost, and he just slowly came in, and I thought he was 30 yards. He was a little bit quartered away.
Okay.
And he was coming up the hill, and I didn't want him to go past me, because I felt like if he went past me, he would smell like it.
It'd wind you?
I thought something would happen. The party was going to be over. Well, so I thought he was at 30 yards. It turns out he was at like 20, because my shot hit a little high. He was at like 20. Because I had ranged a tree. I had ranged a bunch of trees, and I knew the one tree was at 30 or whatever. And I think he walked past it. And so he was more at like 20. But he was right there, and I put an arrow right in that sucker. It went all the way up to the fletchings.
Nice.
And it started staggering right away, and I was like, "Oh, that's perfect!" A lot of times when you hit them, they just sprint off, and then you're like, "Oh, what's gonna happen? Are we ever gonna find it?" So when he started staggering and not running off, I was like, "Oh, this is perfect. He's going down." And so he turned around, and he kind of just drunk and staggered a little ways, and then he laid down within 60 yards. And I probably could have kept shooting more arrows at him, but I kind of learned when I shot the bear, I kept missing. The first shot I made on the bear I thought was a bad shot because it hit way back.
Okay.
But what I didn't realize is that it came out his armpit on the other side. So it was actually a perfect shot.
Yeah, that was a beautiful shot.
So I kept, because I thought it was a really bad shot, I kept trying to put more arrows in it, and I kept missing, and I kept scaring the bear, but the bear he didn't go 10 feet. He died. But I was like, oh, I don't want to. So we were on the top of this mountain, and the last thing I wanted to do was hike this elk from the bottom of the canyon back up the mountain. I'm like, die on the top of the mountain. So I didn't want to fling any more arrows at it and scare it or nothing. Like, I just didn't make a peep, and I think that worked out. So he like bedded down, and then he got up again and he walked like another 30 yards and he bedded down. And I'm like, okay, he's not going to get up. And then the guide made some noise on the hill and he got up again and walked just out of sight. And I was like, oh, crap. And so anyway, the guide and one of the other hunters, they decided to go keep hunting because the other guy had an elk tag they were trying to fill. And so I just stayed there, and like every like 10 minutes, I'd hear some branches breaking just out of view right on that little knoll where I saw him disappear. So I was
Hey everyone, Jake with HJ Sports. We got some exciting news today. Our new Tetra line of bow sights, the Tetra LT, and the Tetra Max are going to be compatible with the new UltraView scopes. So we'll be selling the Windage along with our infinite adjust plate to make the UltraView compatible with all of our Tetra line sights. So you'll be able to take a Tetra Max, a Tetra LT. You can also take the Tetra Max in a Hunter Edition frame or a Dovetail, and the same with the Tetra. So you'll have a bunch of different options to put your favorite scope along with your favorite frame of your choice. So when you're looking to make the UltraView compatible with any of our Tetra line sights, you're going to want to make sure that you buy the complete kit that we're going to be selling. We'll be selling it to dealers as well on our website. You're going to want to make sure that you're getting the infinite adjust plate and the windage. It's important that we use our windage system, as that is the one that will be compatible with the UltraView scope. So when you're looking at purchasing a complete sight to get with the UltraView, you can either convert your current Tetra over to fit the UltraView. You'll need the windage then. And if you're looking at completely starting from scratch, buying one of our sights and putting the UltraView scope on it, you'll want to purchase one of our Tetra 900 frames, which, as I mentioned before, you can get it in a variety of different options. You can visit our website to see all the details there. So along with a new piece that we'll be selling to make the UltraView compatible with the HHAs, you're still going to get all of the features that you would normally get in an HHA sight. You'll get your second access completely independent from your 20-yard elevation adjustments on the infinite adjust bracket. Still get third access. All the features that you're accustomed to seeing in an HHA sight, you'll still get with an UltraView scope. You can check the video in our description to see how we installed the UltraView scope onto a Tetra 900 frame. So the HHA components on this sight do carry a 100% lifetime warranty, just as any other HHA product does. This is a product that we're really excited to introduce to you, and really excited to partner up with UltraView on this project. For more information, you can visit our website at www.hjsports.com.
I felt 100% sure that he was just out of sight right on that knoll, and I waited there for about half hour, 45 minutes, and then I went walking over there before it got dark, and I went through the trees right where I expected to see him, and he wasn't there. I was like, oh man. And it just went downhill from there. I was like,
boy.
oh dude. And so I was I'm like, he's got to be here, and so I'm like looking, and I started going around the trees. He's not here, he's not here, he's not here. And I started working down the hill, and I only went like 3 zigzags, and he was right there. I was like, oh.
That's awesome. It's a big one right there.
Yeah, and it turned out it wasn't a raghorn. So it was like a really, what they call a freak nasty.
A freak, okay.
And so on one side it had like a little 3 bullwinkle horn, and then on this side it had a big spike, and then it had a drop tine that split like this, like a kickstand.
Weird.
So that's his nickname, Kickstand.
So did you do a shoulder mount or a European mount?
Just the Euro mount. And actually, I got a call from the taxidermist today.
Nice.
That the bear and the elk head are ready. So
That's
he's getting
exciting.
the shipping charges, Schmitty's in Oklahoma. So luckily, yeah. Oh boy, don't get me started on the trying to fly the elk back. Oh, dude. So yeah, there's a lot of logistics involved. I should tell that story because it could help a lot of people. So
Yeah,
I knew,
probably
luckily, Parker lived in Texas, and him and his buddy were driving from Texas to New Mexico, and then I was going to fly in and meet him there. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to need ice chests if I get an elk to fly the meat back, and they're going to have to be big ice chests. And the town that we were hunting in was like, there's nothing there. Like, there's like a couple stores, but there's no Walmart where you're gonna find like 5 big ice chests, So I was like, okay, I need the ice chests before.
Yeah.
So I was smart enough, and luckily he was driving and they were bringing a trailer. So I looked around and I found these big ice chests from Walmart. And they weren't that expensive. They were less than $100 a piece or something. It only cost me like $250 for 4 of them.
Okay.
Delivered to Texas. I had them delivered right to Parker's house. So he showed up with these big, massive ice chests, which saved the day when it came down to it. So I looked ahead before I got the elk, flying. And so they say it's 100-pound limit. So every airline has different rules and different prices they charge you. And they don't really tell you exactly. Like, you can read their website and they kind of they're like, generally it's like this, but it could be like, it's not like black and white. Like, and I tried calling the phone number, nobody ever answers. Like, so I never got like a clear, this is what it's going to cost you before I went.
Okay.
But it was clear that they were going to charge you more if it weighs over 50 pounds. And it can't weigh over, but they said it was only $100 more or something like that. And it can't weigh over 100. So anyway, we're packing everything up, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to only bring I'm going to only fly back with 3 ice chests because like every one of them is like hundreds of dollars. Even though I had the 4th one. So I'm like, I'm going to give Parker my 4th ice chest, and I gave him half the bear because I knew I couldn't fly the whole thing back. And, he set the whole thing up. So I was like, yeah, here, take half the bear. And so I had basically the 4 quarters, half a bear, and all the back straps in 3 ice chests. And we put ice, they were frozen. Luckily, because we went through the guide, they have like a huge, barn with a freezer and all this stuff. So they were able to freeze it solid pretty much before I left.
Okay.
And we went and got ice. So we put ice in there and everything. The guide helped, pack them all up. And I picked up, one end. I'm like, oh, it's not that heavy. So we drive to, Albuquerque's where I was flying out of. And they dropped me off on the curb with these big ass ice chests, and they split to Texas. And luckily they have, you put some money in and you get like a little cart. And so I was able to get the ice chest on the cart and wheel them in. I got to wheel all this stuff in there, plus all my luggage and my bow, get in line. And, and my plane's going to be, I only got like an hour until I'm supposed to fly.
Jeez.
And so I finally get to the front of the line, I'm like, guess what I have? Let's put this on the scale. So, I think they did my luggage and everything first. And then they're like, okay, put the ice chest on. So we slapped the first one on, weighed like 136 pounds. And I was like, oh crap, that's over 100. So we take it off, we put the next one on. It was like 150. All three of them were overweight. Like none of them passed. And I was like, oh crap. I'm like, well, can I just pay a little more? Like, can I talk to somebody? How can we resolve this? And the lady was basically just like, you can talk to whoever you want, but we're not going to take those things because they're over 100 pounds. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, over 100 doesn't go. Doesn't matter who you talk to. I was like, oh. She's like, you can take them down the street to an air freight place and they'll, ship them. It'll probably be like astronomical. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't have a car. And I got, 300-pound ice chests and the place is down the street and I got an hour. Like, I'm like, oh crap. She's like, well, can your friends help you out? And I was like, oh. So I'm like, I got to do so. I thought, I'm like, okay, I got to get rid of some of this weight and I'm not going to leave it on the curb in front of the airport. So I called my friends from Texas and I'm like, hey, they have a 10-hour drive ahead of them and they're 20 minutes into it. And I call them up and I'm like, hey, you guys got to turn around. Not a call you want to have. But I'm like, dude, I am hosed right now. You guys need to save me. So turn around. And thank God they did. They turned around, came back. In the meantime, I'm dragging all the ice chests back out on the street. I'm opening up all the valves to try to let any water out. You lose weight. They're all taped up, so they don't. So I'm ripping all the tape off, getting them all ready. And then, 15, 20 minutes later, they came pulling in with so basically I ended up offloading half the elk.
Okay.
I had to give them a hind quarter and a front shoulder. And I had to pour a bunch of the ice out. So the first one I weighed, it was like 90. Luckily, I talked to the lady, and there was like one of the stations wasn't being used.
Okay.
And it had the scale. And so I was like, hey, can I use this scale? Because she's got a line of people, I can't wait in line to weigh each one each time, I only got an hour to get on my plane. And she's like, oh yeah, you can use the scale. I'm like, oh God, thank God. So the first one, I pulled the hind quarter out of, shuffled some stuff around, got in there, it weighed 96 pounds. I was like,
sweet.
Oh man. I'm like, okay, this one's good. And then the next one, I took the front shoulder out of, and I brought it in, and it was still 15 pounds over. And it was a hind quarter and some ice. So I took it back out, poured all the ice out, the hind quarter back, got in there, it was 98 pounds.
Oh, sweet.
I'm like, oh God, thank God. And then the last one, I had to get rid of a bunch of ice too. And there was 96 pounds. And I got them all in there and I taped them back up and I made my flight, but I was sweating bullets. And then the crazy thing though, when I got back to San Jose, I'm like, I wonder how they're gonna, I figured they'd notify me. They'd be like, hey, we have these 3 extra large packages over here for you to pick up. Usually they separate stuff that you would think that out.
That makes sense.
They do that with your gun and your bow sometimes, or definitely with the gun. But I'm sitting there, and the luggage starts coming. Next thing you know, my ice chest. They put it on the carousel.
Oh shit.
All 3 of them. And it'd be one thing if we were in Colorado, people might be used to seeing that, but in San Jose,
It's like, where's these big old bodies coming from?
I got like, I'm wearing camo. I got gun, cases and like 3 huge ice chests. They're like, this guy's got dead stuff. I'm dragging him out to the curb. Luckily, I had thought ahead and I had consulted one of my buddies who has a truck because I was like, I can't Uber 3 ice chests home. So he was on call. I'm all, if I get an elk, I'm gonna need you to come pick me up. And like, sure enough, and he came down and we slapped everything in the back of his truck, and I got a nice ride home. Mission accomplished.
Talk about some hurdles, but man, that's a hell of a story.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking now is I'm gonna, like, if I go elk hunting, I'm gonna try and do it in like Arizona where I can drive there. Somewhere. Well, so I don't have as much. That's the hard part, is if you don't have a bunch of vacation, you don't want to spend like 2 days driving there, and that's 4 days of driving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your vacation, and you're not hunting. You probably just used up half your vacation, and so you might only get 2 or 3 days to hunt. I mean, it depends on how much vacation you got, but like the flying thing is appealing. Plus, you're not in a car for 12, 28 hours. You know what I mean? Yeah. But then there's the whole flying the stuff back, and I had never. I know people do it, so it just comes with experience. I watched the Gritty Bowman. He does a great little YouTube channel. I watched a couple of his things, and one thing they said they do, which makes a lot of sense, is they use these Yeti. They're called pangas. Basically, it's a Yeti duffel bag that. It says it's not an ice chest, but I guess it's watertight. So like it won't leak a bunch of blood out of it.
As it thaws.
Yeah, and they're super expensive. They're like a couple $100 for one of these pangas, but it's like a big ass duffel bag. And so what the Gritty Bowman says they do is they go, because like, they can't, most of the time there isn't someone there or bringing you an ice chest like happened on this one adventure. You gotta either, you gotta do something. So they bring these pangas with them, and they collapse, or they put all their gear inside of it, and then when they shoot something, I don't do this, but they said they debone like a whole elk inside the hotel room.
Oh, that's insane.
And then they go to a bar or a grocery store or a place with a walk-in freezer, and they go, hey, can we like throw this in your freezer for a while? And they're like, oh, sure. And so they basically put the meat in a freezer, and it freezes solid. And then they put them in the pangas. They just pack it full of meat, and then they fly, and they're like, they've flown for 8 hours, and like the meat barely thaws out, because it's frozen and it's all in that thing. Plus it's in an air, cargo. It's only like the hour that's in between flights, on a layover where it would probably even be thawing out or whatever. But that's what they do. At least that's what, that's what he says online, but it makes perfect sense, but it does. That's one thing I really value about like his, and listening to him and like Aaron, Snyder from Kafaru, is they're out there doing it, for real. They're in the mountains for, weeks, and if it's bad weather, I'm like, I'm not gonna stay. They get a little extreme, I'll rough a little bit of weather, but like I'm not trying to die out there.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'll stay in the hotel, or you got a trailer. One thing that I learned, I don't know, some people like they just, and it helps them become, they're more successful hunting. They just, no matter what the conditions, they go, no matter what. And if I'm not, more power to them.
Yeah.
but I've seen like when it's the weather's like really, I've heard stories about people. I know you can catch trout in like gnarly weather and people do kill stuff in gnarly weather, but like I've seen it like when it's like super cold and stuff like that, the deer don't even move. Like they're frozen. I mean, I don't know. I can't say because I don't live back, where it's super cold.
You
like
don't live
you.
where I live, where it's my biggest doe I've ever shot was -13.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I had pictures of it. My whole beard was just full of ice because I didn't have a face mask to protect my face.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Because I've seen it a little bit here. So there was one day on my Indiana hunt where I chickened out in the morning because I'd been in the tree for like 4 days, and it was like the temperature like it was like 34 every morning, which wasn't, I was fine. I've been duck hunting my whole life. It gets in the 30s. And I had enough gear and everything, so I wasn't like cold or nothing. But I was just like, you know what, I'm passing today. And you know what? No one shot nothing. So I try to play the odds, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've been there. I've been in your shoes.
There's like duck hunting too. I kind of do that, and some of my, because I own a small duck club, some of my guys think I'm a little crazy, but it's paid off. Like the fog, like hunting in the fog, you can't see the ducks. It's colder than hell, and I've learned, because I've been doing it my whole life, that when the fog lifts, that's when you shoot all the ducks. So if it's like pea soup fog, I stay home until like 8 or 9 o'clock. And I stay nice and warm. And because if you get up, you go out there super early, you just get cold and hungry, and you want to go in right when it gets good. You know what I mean? So I'd rather show up at prime time all raring to go. That's my philosophy.
Yeah.
But if you can miss it, like, so what I've learned is like, because it's foggy here doesn't mean it's foggy over there, and you can't predict exactly when the fog's gonna lift, so it's not a complete science.
Yeah. Unless you have like a cellular camera where it's like oh look, it's starting to clear. Let's go.
Unless your cabin is on the pond and you can look out the window.
That's true.
There was one time where it was so cold. I was actually staying at a cabin out there next door at this other club, and it was so cold it looked like it snowed. It didn't snow. It must have been like freezing fog. So every plant was iced over. It looked like it snowed. Everything was white. And this is California. It doesn't ever look like that. Yeah. It was cold, boy. There was mud hens frozen in the pond and they died because it was so cold. No
kidding.
Yeah. So anyway, I got out of my sleeping bag and I could barely handle it in the house. The house was like a shack. And like we got out, we didn't even want to get out of our sleeping bag. We looked out the window, we're like, oh no. So some other guys from out of town who drove a couple hours, they showed up and they went out and they sat out there for like 2 or 3 hours. And eventually, like, I hopped out of bed and I got the fire going and like started thawing the house out. And then we got some breakfast going, and we're nice and toasty, and we're like chewing breakfast burritos, looking out the window going, God damn, it looks cold out there. Finally, these guys come in, they're blue, man. They are just frozen. They didn't even fire a shot. And they come in and like, they like pop their head and smell all the, I was eating venison sausages. They're like, oh my God. So anyway, they end up leaving, and we're all fat and happy and warm, ready to go. We're like, all right, let's go out there. So yeah, we went out there. That's when we saw the mud hen frozen alive in the pond. But we jumped in the blind, and it was like, it had just warmed up just enough to where the ducks started flying. We had a hell of a shoot.
That's beautiful. You couldn't plan that any better.
So I don't know. It's that I apply that a little bit to like it may be totally non-existent for deer hunting. I've only been back east one time in deer hunting, one time. So I don't, I rely on what the guide tells me. If he tells me it's going to be good, then I'll get my ass up and get out there. but I'm like, if the deer are frozen, how am I supposed to shoot them? But you said minus 13, huh? You shot a deer.
Yeah, so it's because deer eat on average of 4 times in a 24-hour period. So it's
I learned a little bit about that.
You're just looking at that trying to get on that pattern to where they're going to be getting up and walking. And it's like when you primarily gun hunt, like when I shot my does, it was I think it was 2013, 2014. The doe was just getting up, walking, and like I knew they came up right behind me. And it's like the guys I was out hunting with is first time ever hunting this property. It's like a little over 120 acres to work with. So there's a lot of ground to cover, but these guys have been hunting for 20 years. So it's like, well, we're going to set you right here because we want you to get a deer. We don't know what's going to come through here, but we know there's going to be a deer movement. It's like, all right, cool. So it's like sat there and the deer ended up having to go. I saw this big mature doe. It's like she's been shot at more than once, and coming to find out, I pulled her hide off. Yeah, she had been shot in the hindquarter, and it healed up over the top of the slug. And so she tucked back around. She had a whole herd of does with her. And then oddly enough, there was an 8-point buck in there. And we get done hunting for when we go meet up and stuff like that to kind of warm up and stuff because it'd be -13. And we like, well, this is where we got set up for a push. So it's like, all right, for all the new guys are hunting, it's like, you guys get here first. We're gonna come and push. And that same doe that busted me earlier, she showed up, and I put a round through her heart, and she reared up and just dropped straight down. So that's a pretty happy moment right there. And yeah, it was good eating off of that. But yeah, it's unique on how things will move, whether it be snowing and stuff like that. I tend to avoid going out hunting when it's snowing, because if you happen to arrow that deer and it's like the snow's coming down pretty thick, you're gonna lose that blood trail real quick. And it's like it's easier to err on the side of caution than it is just like, well, I'm sure I can arrow it really well and I can find it, but it's like you just don't want to run the risk of losing it or jumping on a piece of property you don't have permission for. It's like, well, now you have to call the DNR, and it's like, well, good luck because now it's buried.
That was the crazy thing about the elk that I shot is not a drop of blood fell out of that sucker. Like the arrow went all the way up to the fletching and didn't come out the other side. And it must have just like sealed up on the arrow or something. Like it was kind of a high lung shot. And I think it went, I clipped one lung, and then I think I hit the liver because it was kind of a diagonal. Yeah, because his rib cage, you could see when we cleaned him, you could see where the arrow was like cutting on the inside of his rib cage on down here.
Oh, so as he's walking, it's just cutting everything. It's just tearing stuff up on the inside.
And but I was looking on the like there wasn't a drop of blood. Like if we didn't find,
that's what happened to him. I hit him high shoulder, and I knew I double lunged him. But it's like if it wasn't that he didn't pile up 40 yards after where I shot him at, it's like I would have never found him. It's just basically all I did is like went to the neighbor, knocked on his door because it's like I didn't have permission to hunt on it or walk it. So when it was 6 o'clock in the morning, he was not very happy about that, but it's like I needed to get it because I knew there's coyotes out there for my trail cams.
Oh, man,
and so once I got permission, I went back to where my arrow was, where I knew where I arrowed him at, and I just kind of kept him walking in a straight line because I just kind of followed him till I lost him in sight. And then as I got to the fence line, and then 30 yards more, there he was. But at that point in time, I shot him at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't get him until 6 o'clock. So rigor mortis was fully set in. So this guy weighed probably 250 pounds. It took me and my wife to pull him out, and with his legs all sticking, it's like he's in that buckbrush where it's really thick.
Oh,
and so going up underneath trees and stuff like that. So it's like we just formed a train. So like she was in front of me, and I just grabbed the back of her backpack, and I had a backpack strap where it just comes on the top, buckles on the waist, around the waist of the chest. Then it had an 8-foot long rope, wrapped it around the antlers, and just kind of tore him, brought him out. So that's why he's a full mount. But it's like when people see his neck, it's like you understand why I shot him, because he's only got 3 on one side and 4 on the other. But the unique thing is, like, days after I pulled him off the land, bucks just start showing up. Stuff that I've never even seen. He's what they consider a bully buck. It's like where he's just massive. Doesn't have a big ref, but he's just big. I ate off of him for 2 years.
Oh, well.
Yeah, because it's like my wife found out that she can only eat so much, and then the venison starts reacting with her stomach in not a positive way. So it's like, well, so I tend to eat a lot more of it. But I got a smoker here a couple weeks back, so I've been really experimenting with that aspect, and she's been enjoying it more, and it doesn't tear up her stomach as much. So it's like, it's just I can only do so much what she can do. So
yeah. No, it was a great experience hunting in Indiana. Like, I want to go back for sure. I mean, I was supposed to go back the next year, and then just things didn't work out.
It'd be cheaper for you to come here and hunt in Wisconsin, because an over-the-counter tag is $160, and the buck
it's
tag,
not expensive in Indiana either.
No,
it was staying, it's going through Chad.
yeah, right. Yeah, that's the upside,
But I was like living the lifestyles of the rich and famous. So I mean, not too often you get to stay in a mansion.
That is true.
He's got it's a Mustang car. It's a pool table with a huge bar. He's got video games. Like, it's just stupid.
That is awesome. It's kind of like, it reminds me of Travis Bigger. He's got bigger Bucks Outfitters there in Illinois, and he puts people on 170s, 180s, and he's got something like 20 Tacticam cameras, so he kind of has them all synchronized. Some of that. I got a chance to meet him this year because a buddy of mine, Brian Sparks, he's a chemist, just a genius with the whole nasal cavity. Like, he makes scent control. He makes scent products. Okay. So
nice.
He makes them for elk, predator hunting, and then also whitetail and such. And he just knows the chemistry in the nose, and how, like, he knows how to put the key in and lock it and just rip them up. Like, they show me pictures of these two bucks going at it, and they have videos of from all the cameras and such, because he has this mock scrape stuff where it's layered. So it's like it has a smell like a buck just urinated. Then it has a smell like where a buck urinated like 2 weeks ago, another one from 3 weeks ago. But it's like they got pictures of one where they got in fights about 4 years ago, where it was so violent that one of them lost its eye. He was a 190 class buck, and the kid on the neighboring farm, he was like 11, 12 years old, opening gun season, shot him. It's like first buck ever, and on top of that, it's like now his bar's so high, it's like I don't think he'll ever achieve that level again.
Yeah, it was just, I missed my opportunity. It was just weird. So basically we got hooked up with a guy. There was a local guide that he took us around when we were in Indiana, and he had access to this Boy Scout camp, like a huge, I don't know how many, 1,000 acres, some massive thing, and nobody hunts it, right? Because it's the Boy Scout camp, and He had permission to hunt it. And the very first morning, he's like, okay, he's gonna put the one guy I'm with in this other stand. It was just, first morning was just me and this one other guy, and he's like, I'm gonna put you. He's all, I got this perfect place to put you. And so we drop off the first guy, and then we go to drop me off, and we pull in, and there's cars. Some people are camping there. He's like, what the hell? They're not supposed to be camping here. Like, he's got it all arranged, And so some people that weren't supposed to be there were there. He's like, oh crap. So he had to put me in some other spot. I ended up seeing deer. I was in every spot I sat in was amazing. Like, I could tell, like, I'm not an idiot. I'm like, this is a good spot. So every spot I was at was great. And I had deer. I saw does. I saw some bucks in like a lot of different spots. But that spot that he tried to put me in the first morning, he put me in a couple days later. And I had just missed the buck. He had a camera there, and it actually sends him pictures to his phone.
Okay. And
when I got back from the stand, he's like, here's an hour before you got there. Here's the buck standing there. And like, he's all, here, stand in front of the camera, and like he showed me, he like took a picture of me standing in the same, And then the very next day, a guy that I met on the hunt who was a really good dude, I was super happy he got it. But he hunted that same stand and he ended up shooting his buck out of that stand. So it was, and he, what happened, unfortunately for him, he got a decent buck, a nice buck. But I guess what happened was there was 2 bucks and they came running in, fighting each other. And they were doing circles like right in front of his stand. And he thought he ended up shooting a small buck because they were spinning around so much and he lost track of which one was which. And he thought he was on the big one, and he shot and then he was like, oh. So there was an even bigger buck there that none of us got, but it was good. And I learned a lot about, like, I'd never had a deer, like, I guess the does, like they, I don't know if you call it a snort and a wheeze or
snort wheeze. Yep.
But they like narc you off, the does.
Yeah, they'll narc you out. Yes, they will.
Yeah. So I had he was like doing this.
Oh, the stomp.
And, like,
yep, I've been there.
And like wheezing at me, and I'm like, what the hell's that thing doing? And I was in. So I got confused. It's every time they drop you off, they're like, okay, this is how you get to the stand. You go here. It's like they just bombard you with information, and so like sometimes you get kind of like lost. They have little markers that you follow.
Okay.
But actually this one stand you had to cross a big field. And so there was no markers in the field. And so like I went out there where I thought he said to go and there was no stand. And I'm like looking back and forth. Well, it turns out I thought he said don't go to the corner. But that's where the stand was. So I never went to the corner, but I kept walking back and forth where I thought he said to go. That's where he told me to go, but then I guess I was supposed to go to the corner. I didn't understand what he was saying. But anyway, I just kept walking around. Thing about the Midwest is if you walk around long enough, you're going to find a stand.
That's so true. That's so, especially when you come to Wisconsin, you'll see these beautiful box blinds.
Yeah. So anyway, I walked around and then there's this old metal, real nice stand. Like it was like more of a rifle stand, I think. It was like homemade construction, but had a nice bench in it. It wasn't too high, but I'm like, oh, that must be it, So I got in it, and it was a great spot. Like I had does coming out all around me, and then a does, and there was a nice buck that came out, but like it was too far. He never came to me. But yeah, it was so he brought me back like a couple days later, and then he's like, no, go to the corner. So then I found the right blind. But if I would have been in the other one, I probably could have got a buck. Because the deer came and right where that stand was at, they were all like sitting right in the field. But the only problem with that stand, I think, is you're right in the middle of their action. So I think, yeah, it's a fine line of being in the right spot and being in the middle of the action and blowing it. Like, yeah. So it's a lot to learn. I just listen to the guide. I don't pay somebody and then tell them what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a reason why I gave him my money in the first place.
Exactly.
Like some of these, people go on guided fishing, fishing things, and they're like, no, I'm going to set it up this way. I've watched it on sturgeon boats, the guy's like, oh no, this is how I do it. And the guy's like, okay. Boom, here you go. You listen to if you don't have faith in them, then it's hard to make things happen. You gotta trust your guides.
Yeah, I went on a guided charter fish for king salmon here last fall, and we ended up catching 3 of them, but we had a whole bunch of on the hooks, but we let them go. But the thought was like we saw them land a couple of them. It's like we brought them into the boat. So like, okay, so we could probably put this together. And there were 6 of us. I was like, well, maybe we can like have a chance to sit by a rod and have a chance. But the thing is like where you could lose them at is actually when you pull the rod out of the holster. And I've recorded a couple of podcasts with Captain Cody Lukes, and he was telling me like, well, like how we should do it, and like and what you should do next time, and like because we're gonna probably do another trip this upcoming fall again with him. But what we'll do is like instead of bringing 6 guys, we're just gonna bring 4 because it says like with 6 guys, it's nice. Your cost for the trip is a little bit less per person.
Yeah.
But with 4 guys though, you're gonna have more times at bat, and you'll be able to catch more fish and such like that. And it's like, yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do this time around. And so it was definitely a learning experience. We still got fish in the boat. We split the fish all evenly between the 6 of us guys and such. So it was well worth the money. We had a blast.
Salmon fishing in Wisconsin.
We go to Lake Michigan over by Kewanee. It's just south of over by Green Bay. Yeah,
I was thinking maybe the Great Lakes, but I didn't really realize there was salmon in those lakes.
We do. We have some in that come through. They all go up and down the coast, all the way down to northern Illinois, all the way back up to Canada. And we just kind of we hit them. If you hit them in the fall, there's a grace period right around Labor Day and 9/11 during that time frame where the bigger salmon are coming up to go way upstream and such. And we caught 2 25-pounders and then a simple like little 5-pounder.
Yeah. Awesome.
So it was definitely well worth the money, and it's like he let me work at his booth this at the Deer and Turkey Expo here a couple weeks ago, and he got me get his little hall pass. So it's like I spent the time networking with people, recording a couple podcasts on site because I have my setup to go where I can travel and do podcasting. My wife got me this nice little hard case, and I've traveled down to Florida and Illinois and Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, all places to record podcasts. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on your podcast. This has been pretty cool.
Yeah. It's like I let the gates open, man. You talked a lot of really solid points, and I'm really happy how everything is progressing for you and such. And man, this is just going to be exciting to see everything come through. Now it's like I'm just going to be looking for either a Carter or something that's in my price range to be able to put things together. So I might have to sell one, but who knows what we'll all come out with, because I just like the concept to be able to have that right there and like less movements to have easy access to it. Because like you both know, it's like you hunted in Indiana. It's like the colder it gets, the more layers you have, the more pockets you get.
Yeah. Well, yeah, man, if I'm ever out that way, I'll have to hit you up. Because like I said, they're made in Wisconsin, my injection molded ones. So at some point, so I imagine, volumes are going to get too high for me to be doing myself. Because right now I do all the assembly and everything. And if I'm trying to work, like it could become a problem if that's why I'm trying not to blow up, like I said, too quick. I'm trying to slowly ramp into things. Well, I can. So I need to go to Wisconsin. I need to talk with my injection molders. So they do some assembly. So once I probably by next year, my sales should be pretty steady. I mean, my sales. So my first year was last year. I made $12,000. That's not profit. That's like what I sold.
Yes.
And that's not, and I didn't even start till like the beginning of April. So that wasn't even a full year. I'm probably looking at doing like 18 to 22,000 this year. I'm guessing, like just the way things are going. And so then like the next year I should be probably hitting maybe closer to 30 or something. Depends. Like things get crazy. Like sometimes, orders just start flying in. I don't even know where they're coming from. Also, it's just like, oh my God, what? And then there's times where there's just nothing. Like last week, it was like crickets. And then all of a sudden, like, yeah, it just depends on who's walking around showing their buddy. And then like all of a sudden I get 5 orders. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, because we here in the Midwest, we're pretty popular with the kids and stuff like that. And we have the S3DA shoots, and you get a couple of kids in that right there, and they go on to to regionals and nationals, and you can blow up real fast because regional or nationals can have a couple hundred kids, 500 to 600 kids. Then Texas A&M, that is the premier school for archery. So if you get picked up to go shoot, that's where everybody they have something like ridiculous, like 12 or 13.
That's probably where I sell the most mounts is Texas.
Wouldn't surprise me because Texas A&M has a phenomenal program out there, and it's like
my friend Parker, I was telling you about this from Texas. He brought his mount back, and then he brought his bow into a local archery shop, and they called me. They're like, hey, we got to get some of these. And then he brought it into another shop, and they called me. And so they bought some for themselves. Like the owners are like, I want this on my bow. And so then they've been walking around and customers have seen it. And so then I've been like, it's just been mushrooming out. And then I just had a Houston archery. They just called me. Someone in Houston brought one in.
Yeah, if Rogan catches wind of that for his silverback, man, it's gonna be a game changer.
Yeah.
Well, man, Paul, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. We are like cruising 3 hours, man. This is like, what do we like? My second longest podcast. Like this is freaking awesome.
You can edit out a bunch.
No, I keep everything because, like I said, this is all going to be on YouTube. And then it's like even the times where you went and grab stuff, I just put it on pause and hit record right when you got back. So it's like I've maintained a consistency all through it. And it's like we have so much. Man, this is absolutely a blessing. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and how you like strategically doing your marketing. It's like, dude, hats off, man. Bravo.
Oh, thank you, Jeff.
You're very welcome,
you
sir.
Having me on. This has been a great opportunity for me, and I feel, I never thought I'd be on any podcast.
Yeah,
I mean?
I will definitely I'll spread the word to my friends and stuff like that because I know I have a few of them that use several of your releases. Use the releases that you have molds for, so it'd be perfect for them to have you on and have that conversation and such. So it's like,
well, I'll tell you what. Next time we do a podcast, it'll be when you have a mount. So you can talk about how it is to you've actually tried it. I wanted to, I was going to, if you had a release, I was going to send you the mount, but then I remembered, you don't have it. And occasionally I do have extra releases and I try to like do giveaways and stuff like that. So I don't know, one of these days.
But yeah, it's like for the low end market, man, this True Fire 4-finger edge is like that's the one that that hasn't changed in probably a decade, and they still make. I
need to make one of those, and it's only $100, so I should buy one and make a prototype and send it to you so you can test it out.
Oh, hell yeah, man! Oh yeah, it's like this year I have 8 shoots that it's going, and I'll be recording podcasts. Is like you bet your ass I will be talking about every single podcast.
Awesome! I'll have to get on the ball then.
No problem, man. Well, thank you, Paul, for coming on the podcast. How can people find you?
Advanced Outdoor Technology. My website is ADV, short for advanced, and then outdoor, and then tech.com. So I had to come up with the world's longest name. My email is advancedoutdoortechnology@gmail.com. It's like this long. Or Instagram. I'm always on Instagram. Most of my business is from Instagram and just people talking about it. And I have a Facebook, but like you could probably message me through there. I'll still get back to you.
I think everybody in the outdoor world is going to either go wild of the app itself or they're going to
I have that app. I should start. I have a personal thing. I haven't done my
professional one.
So you think it's? maybe that's something I should be getting on the ball and getting one going.
right now it's TikTok, Instagram, and Go Wild. Those are the 3 platforms that if you're in the outdoor world, you're going to be there. TikTok has its own thing, but since it's just archery, it's like that's where it's like Abu Garcia has their stuff on there. They're blowing up. And like anybody's anybody. That's
I don't like China.
yeah, I completely agree.
China owns TikTok, or it's a Chinese. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just I don't want to deal with that.
I don't blame. Well, yeah, because it's like with your product, it's like you're gonna see it showing up on Wish or Alibaba or some shit.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's just the whole thing. I'm just skeptical of the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame it. But yeah, Instagram, the reels are where it's at, man. And then Go Wild. So thank you again. I'm gonna let you go. You as well.
All right. Talk to you later.